Futian finally understood what his father had said to him before: the human ancestor was not the real human ancestor. Now, he could vaguely sense that it was highly possible that the human ancestor that he was facing now was only a clone of the human ancestor. The human ancestor that had survived since the era of the Heavenly Path's collapse had been cultivating every moment of these countless years. He had even collected countless great emperor relics from when the Heavenly Path had collapsed and found the traces of the gods in this world. How could he not be powerful? Was the force that he had felt earlier the force brought on by the human ancestor's true consciousness? Then the human ancestor turned and looked toward him. Destructive light shot out of his eyes. Using a thought, Futian's body disappeared from the spot and appeared before Donghuang the Great. "Father, let's go," he said. Since the human ancestor was just a clone and had an undying body, it meant that this battle had no meaning anymore. They could not kill the enemy, and in that battle, he had also made risky actions. This was an extremely unbalanced battle. The two transformed into two beams of light and shot into the distance, instantly vanishing from the spot. But Tiantian used their mind, and the vast world was instantly frozen. The space was locked, and everything here seemed to fall into a still state. But Futian was in his own divine domain. Divine power exploded, and he transformed into a spot of light, streaking through the space. The power of the sealed void could not stop his departure. The two instantly streaked into the distance. The eternal swordlord looked at the escaping figures and cut down with his sword remotely. The sword crossed the space to kill them. It crumbled the vast void. All the stars in its path shattered and collapsed, getting sliced apart directly. The sword path Milky Way dropped down, and it was like one could not escape this attack no matter how they ran. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. But then the two beams of light that were Futian and Donghuang the Great passed directly through the sword path Milky Way. They streaked forward, passing through, and then continued to escape until they disappeared. The two were figures at the top of the pyramid. Clearly, it was quite unlikely for them to be stopped by this one sword. The group of Tiantian did not pursue them. The gods realized that the vast majority of them might not be able to withstand Futian's attack. They might even get killed instantly, so they definitely could not leave the group to chase after them. The human ancestor did not pursue them either. He stared at the escaping figures and realized that even this Tiantian army could not make the two stay completely. Futian's abilities were not any weaker than Donghuang the Great now. Similarly, he was not weaker than the human ancestor either. In addition, he was skilled in many things and very hard to deal with. Even if they pursued him, there would be no result. Futian's speed was not any slower than them either. Earlier, they had been able to catch him. Futian probably did it purposely to try and exchange blows with them. "Go," the human ancestor said. He led all the Tiantian to leave this place. They prepared to visit the Divine Prefecture's Imperial Palace and the Western Heaven Spiritual Mountain. Futian and Donghuang the Great traveled through the vast void. They did not know where they'd reached, but they stopped after knowing that the others did not chase after them. Father's speculation was correct. The human ancestor we faced may have just been a clone of the human ancestor. He ruled the world and managed the order of the human realm with a clone. The true body of the human ancestor might not have recovered his vitality completely, Futian said to Donghuang the Great. Donghuang the Great understood that Futian discovered some things in the previous exchange of blows. "It must be, Donghuang the Great. Back then, your mother had died because of this. If the other returns, I'm afraid it will be a disaster. Thus, we still have to hurry up." "Yes." Futian nodded, feeling a wave of stress. The human ancestor had the various gods return to be used by him, Futian continued to say. "If it is like how we predicted, then surely the gods fear the human ancestor greatly too. They can only be used by him willingly." "Earlier, many of the great emperors did not attack," Donghuang the Great replied. "Even if they did not attack, surely they have some concerns. The human ancestor wants to replace the heavenly path and take its path. The gods must be fearful of this day too. At that time, the human ancestor would be the supreme existence. Even a great emperor would not dare to go against him. If the human ancestor replaced the heavenly path, becoming an existence like the ancient heavenly path. The various gods would be the gods under his reign. No matter how strong they were, they could not go against the heavenly path like back then. Who could do it again? The battle from the past had already caused the heavenly path to collapse and the gods to fall. If a new heavenly path appeared, who would fight with it? Who dared to fight with it? What will we do next? Yi Futian wanted to hear Dong Huang the Great's suggestion. You will cultivate here, and I'll go out to take a look. I will notify you of news from the outside world, Dong Huang the Great replied. He wanted to give Yi Futian more time to cultivate. Giving up the 99 heavens of the heaven realm and taking everyone away was also to fight for more time. Time in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path flowed at 81 times the speed. If he could get 1 year in the outside world, it would be 81 years. All the people in the micro-heavenly path would be able to transform. Yes. Yi Futian nodded. He was worried about the situation outside too. Now, the human ancestor led the strong figures of the 3 realms to invade. The beings would all suffer greatly. Even though reached a consensus for the cultivators of the heaven realm, divine prefecture, and western heaven world to try not to participate in the battle directly, they still could not avoid the killing and fighting. This was an invasion. The invaders would not be kind. It would be accompanied by fresh blood and white bones. But even so, he was the only one who could change the situation of this battle, and he had to hurry and cultivate to improve himself right now. Let us separate here, Dong Huang the Great said. Father, be careful, Yi Futian said a bit seriously. This time, the enemies that they faced were too strong. Otherwise, with Dong Huang the Great's abilities, he did not need Yi Futian's worry at all. This time was different. The gods of ancient times were all their enemies. Don't worry. I will be careful and avoid battles. You cultivate at peace, Dong Huang the Great said. This time, I have no choice but to abandon the Heaven Palace and Dong Huang Imperial Palace. It is a humiliation. All of this is waiting for you to take back. I will leave now. With that, he turned and walked forward, leaving with extreme decisiveness. He left Yi Futian alone in the vast void. Of course, all the cultivators of the 99 heavens were in his micro-heavenly path world. He did not need to cultivate himself. He also had to help them become stronger. Yi Futian's body flashed, going toward a specific direction. A moment later, he saw a barren star. With a thought, Yi Futian's body appeared on that barren star. Then he went directly to a barren mountain on that barren star and sat down. He closed his eyes to cultivate, starting his seclusion. 1 day in the outside world was 81 days in his micro-world. He had to grasp the advantage of time. 3 months later, on the barren star, Yi Futian sat cross-legged while divine light flowed, enveloping the entire star. He was like an ancient god, sitting there alone as he cultivated in seclusion. Right now, time was flowing at 81 times the speed in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path world. 3 months was essentially 20 years. 20 years was enough for many people to transform. Furthermore, Yi Futian controlled the heavenly law. He could create strong cultivators directly, helping the people inside to speed up their cultivation. The cultivators in Yi Futian's micro-heavenly path world now were the first batch of cultivators. In a way, they were the direct heirs, other than some specific figures. Now, the micro-heavenly path world had been split into 6 camps. They were the 6 legions of the micro-heavenly path world. These 6 legions were the New Heaven Court, the original forces of the Heaven Realm. It was led by Lady Qin and Lady Shu and the people who had joined the Heavenly Imperial Palace. The 2 great emperors Qin and Shu and the top figures of the original Heavenly Palace marshaled this legion. The Revelation Legion led by Dong Huang de Yuan was the force of the original Divine Prefecture. 4 Corners Legion led by the force of 4 Corners Village and cultivators who had joined the Heaven Realm. They were trained by Fang Kun's 4-person group and transformed into a complete entity. It was a relatively new legion. Arhat Legion was a Buddhist legion led by the various Buddhas. There were not many people in this legion, but there were all strong cultivators of the elite-level high monks of the Buddhist clan. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Ziwei Legion consisted of the old members of the Ziwei Imperial Palace. Heavenly Mandate Legion was an old force led by the Heavenly Mandate Academy. The Ziwei Legion and Heavenly Mandate Legion had split up the original Ziwei Imperial Palace. Back in the day, the Ziwei Imperial Palace had established various palaces, thus creating Ziwei and Heavenly Mandate. But after reorganizing this force now, the West Imperial Palace was put into the Ziwei Legion while the Lost Clan was put into the Heavenly Mandate Legion. The 6 great legions were then split into smaller legions and controlled by different people. This kind of reorganization was also in response to the recent changes in the world. It was a war between the 6 realms, and there were many cultivators in the micro-heavenly path world now. They had all come from different forces and clans. If they were not reorganized, they would be like scattered sand. Thus, they had to be newly organized to face the war. A figure stood in the starry sky. It was U2. The 6 legions cultivated in different locations, they all had their territory. He felt like he saw the 8 legions under the former heavenly path. When Futian ruled the world, these forces would be his 8 legions in the future. The devil world would probably come under him too. This was the situation that U2 hoped to see one day. However, everything was still unknown right now. He did not know if he could see the day arrive. In another direction, Futian saw that everyone was cultivating orderly and his consciousness left this place. Futian took out a sorcery item in the outside world and transmitted his consciousness into it. "Father," he said, "how is the outside world now?" He had cultivated for 20 years, but it had only been 3 months in the outside world. However, even though it had only been 3 months, dramatic changes could have occurred. The war has spread everywhere in the 6 realms. Among them, the Heaven Realm's resistance was the weakest. The Divine Prefecture's territory is extremely vast, and there are many cultivators. People everywhere are resisting. The Western Heaven Buddhists' resistance is the most intense. The Buddhist clan is a pure land. After being invaded by the Dark World, the Buddhists believed their pure land had been tainted, so they started a mighty realm war. They pushed back against the Dark World, and the battle was incredibly intense, Donghuang the Great answered. In addition, the human realm seems to be letting this happen purposely. They did not send any support, causing the cultivators of the Dark World to suffer great losses. The Heaven Realm had fallen for a long while, and they did not have much sense of belonging. Their forces were also relatively weak. Naturally, they would not start large-scale resistance. This was also Futian's wish. There was no need to make meaningless sacrifices. The human ancestor's goal is to unify the world. Why would he care about the cultivators of the Dark World? Since the Dark Court decided to participate, then they should pay the cost, Futian said. Anything with the Devil World? No, Donghuang the Great replied. Nowadays, the Devil World has become the only pure land. They're cultivating in peace. I'm afraid the Devil World can't stay unaffected either. The human realm wants to conquer the 7 realms. After taking down the 6 realms, they will probably take over the original realm and then invade the Devil World, Futian said. However, Yusheng also needed time to cultivate now. He had sent over a sorcery item that could change the flow of time. This way, he could also help Yusheng gain more time to cultivate and improve himself. Thus, he was quite happy to see the current situation. He would wait for Yusheng to become stronger. The Divine Prefecture must have been damaged greatly, right? Futian asked. Donghuang the Great was quiet for a bit. Then he said, "You just focus on cultivating. I'm afraid the day that the human ancestor returns is not far away." Futian understood what he meant. The Divine Prefecture must have been significantly damaged. This was an invasive war. Even if they avoided battle, they would still be affected by it. Plus, the initiative was completely in the hands of the other side. However, Donghuang the Great did not want Futian to get involved. They were both clear that Futian's cultivation concerned the entire world. If no one could stop the human ancestor when he returned, then the world would be under the rule of the human realm. "I understand," Futian answered. He did not speak further. He looked up at the empty starry sky and then stood up. With a thought, His body vanished from the spot. Even though his father Donghuang the Great had told him to cultivate in peace, he still wanted to see the situation in the outside world. His father did not tell him everything, fearing he would get worried about the present situation. In the divine prefecture, all of the 18 domains were covered by the fires of war. Strong cultivators of the empty divine realm and human realm had invaded everywhere. There had not been much resistance in the war of the heaven realm. After the human realm figures invaded it, they quickly conquered everywhere in the heaven realm. Now, they were in the ending stages. Thus, after battles died down in the heaven realm, most of the vital figures of the human realm turned to the divine prefecture. They began to attack the 18 domains of the divine prefecture. The divine prefecture had countless cultivation continents. Each of the 18 domains were extremely large. Thus, the human realm and empty divine realm targeted the main continents of the 18 domains. After they took over the core continent, they could fan out to control the entire territory. The Taishang domain had been one of the strongest of the 18 domains. Now, it was also war-ridden. Many battles had erupted on it. Not long ago, there had been an extremely bloody event in the Zixiao domain of the divine prefecture. After that event, the 18 domains of the divine prefecture had started extremely big resistances. People from all the domains stood up and started hunting down the invaders. In the process of the human realm and empty divine realm's invasion, cultivators of many forces started looting madly. They encountered intense resistance from cultivators during the looting and started slaughtering indiscriminately. This caused an entire city to be filled with rivers of blood. This event had shaken the 18 domains of the divine prefecture and completely infuriated the independent cultivators of the divine prefecture. Yi Futian's figure descended upon a continent in the Taiyu domain. Using his consciousness, countless images appeared in his mind instantly. His divine consciousness covered the entire vast continent. He saw many battlefields. Battle had erupted everywhere, and fires burned. According to the rules established by convention, great emperors were not allowed to be involved in the battles. To avoid affecting the innocent people of the divine prefecture, Yi Futian naturally would not directly interfere with this battle. However, this did not mean that he could use any secret methods. Yi Futian could sense that there were many demon beasts with strong cultivations. He used one thought, and a strong demonic cultivator appeared before him. This was the golden-winged giant peng bird. His entire body was golden, but he was in human form. His features were extremely sharp. He was a divine bird, the golden-winged giant peng bird, from the empty divine realm. Whoosh! There was a gale of wind. The golden-winged giant peng bird transformed into a bolt of lightning, flashing toward Yi Futian. He extended his hand. It changed into extremely sharp claws as he clapped down on Yi Futian. This was the other actively attacking him. Yi Futian looked at him with his dark eyes. Instantly, that figure felt a horrible divine consciousness penetrate his mind directly. The next moment, his body came to an abrupt stop. He looked at Yi Futian and bowed in greeting. Master. Yi Futian extracted his memories directly and quickly learned about some things. His brows furrowed slightly, and murderous intent flashed past his eyes. Go, he uttered. Instantly, that figure shot into the clouds and transformed back into its original form. He streaked through the sky and left this place to collect information from the divine prefecture for Yi Futian. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Yi Futian took a step and went before another demon beast. After doing this many times, he controlled quite a few demon beasts and sent them towards the main continents of the divine prefecture. After doing this, Yi Futian's figure appeared at one of the main peaks of the continent. He had received a lot of information in his mind. As expected, father did not tell me this, Yi Futian thought inside. Donghuang the Great had hidden a lot of information in the conversation with him earlier. The divine prefecture's situation was much worse than he had imagined. Naturally, he understood his father's actions. The divine prefecture was the territory that his father ruled. How would he be willing to see today's situation? But for the future, he had to hope that Yi Futian could focus entirely on cultivating and thus did not tell him too much. The present divine prefecture had the fire of war burning in all 18 domains. Countless continents were affected. Even if they purposely tried to avoid conflict, they could not stay untouched, especially in the massacre that had happened recently in Xixiao domain. The forces of the human realm had issued a massacre order. Countless people who had not participated in the war had been massacred. Blood flowed through the entire city like a river. Numerous people had been killed, and it had been gruesome. Even though he knew this was unavoidable in an invasive war, the human realm called themselves justice but were still so cruel and bloody when conquering others. This still made him extremely furious. His eyes contained murderous intent. The killing that had occurred in Xixiao domain started igniting the divine prefecture. Strong figures in all the divine prefecture domains were furious after hearing the news and worried they would have the same fate. The top figures stood up to organize the cultivators of the divine prefecture and started a resistance, hunting down the invaders. This was still the home turf of the divine prefecture. If one only looked at the numbers, the divine prefecture cultivators could drown the invaders. However, the invaders all had very strong cultivations. Otherwise, they would not have come to invade another realm. The fire of war expanded through the 18 domains and could possibly ignite on all fronts. Not too long after, Futian received news that a huge battle was occurring in the central city of the Taishang domain. Taishang City was where the domain chief's manor of the Taishang domain had been. It had a pretty important status in the entire divine prefecture. The cultivators of the Taishang domain were quite strong as a whole, and Taishang City was even more so. The human realm and empty divine realm had been attacked many times during their invasion. After the invaders had killed their way to Taishang City, they were often hunted and killed, causing the invading forces to suffer significant losses. This attracted the attention of the upper level, who reported it to even higher levels. Thus, on this day, the human realm and empty divine realm both transferred strong forces at the same time to overwhelm Taishang City. They prepared to take it down in one go to avoid future problems. That day, some strong legions arrived in the sky above Taishang City. Among them, the strongest force was, without a doubt, the orthodox unity of the human realm. This force was the orthodox force of the human realm and had a close relationship with the human divine palace. In fact, it could be said that they followed orders directly from the human divine palace. The sect leader of the orthodox unity was an important figure in the human realm too. A few years ago, he began to have the reputation of being one of the strongest figures under the great emperor plane. Now, he had reached the emperor plane and followed the human ancestor. The orthodox unity was powerful because of the tight-knit relationship with human divine palace. They had branches everywhere, and their forces were spread throughout the human realm. They were the #1 cultivation force in the human realm, other than the human divine palace. There was no other one. One could imagine how strong they were. Now, the sect leader of the orthodox unity followed the human ancestor, while the vice-sect leaders managed the sect. They were all in the near-deity level and had very frightening cultivations. Right now, they stood in the air, leading the orthodox unity legion. They were ready to invade the city of the Taishang domain. The vice-sect leaders of the orthodox unity all had an air of justice about them. Divine light flowed on their bodies, and they had extraordinary auras. Their gazes scanned the city below. Other than the orthodox unity, they also led many forces from the Taishang domain to attack together. They prepared to take down this city in one fell swoop and then take down the Taishang domain. There was a similarly mighty legion in the Taishang city. This was a voluntary resistance army formed by the cultivators of the divine prefecture Taishang city. In addition, there were many scattered camps inside the entire city. They were all resistors. Right now, they all looked up at the army that had come to conquer them and felt very formidable pressure. Even so, they were still full of the wish to fight. The human realm's invasion had upended the impression of the human ancestor that the people of the divine prefecture had before. These self-proclaimed cultivators of justice were all shams. Donghuang the Great might have seen through the other's disguise long ago and thus rejected Di Hao's marriage proposal so decisively back then. They finally understood why the human ancestor had told Di how to propose to Donghuang Diyuan and why the great emperor had become furious and humiliated Di Hao. The two had an intense rivalry. It seems that they don't plan on giving up. They prepare to continue resisting, a cultivator of the orthodox unity in the sky said after seeing the scene in Taishang City. A group of idiots. Mayflies trying to sway a tree, someone on the side mocked. He announced, Donghuang has already abandoned you all, and you still dare to fight back. You're looking for death. The cultivators of Taishang City were not swayed at all by these words. Had Donghuang the Great abandoned them? Donghuang the Great told them to save themselves, try their best not to get into the war, and wait for the future. They understood how helpless this was. The great emperor probably did not think that the human realm cultivators who are self-proclaimed people of justice will be so bloodthirsty, someone said coldly. The great emperor will not forgive the invaders. Really, the orthodox unity cultivator in the sky sneered. Since you're so stubborn, then you can only be baptized in blood. The vice-sect leader of the orthodox unity looked down from the sky as if he was looking at a group of ants. The strong figures of the orthodox unity and human realm, listen, he announced. The cultivators of Taishang City are killing the masters of justice. In that case, we must bathe Taishang City in blood and kill all with no mercy. The strong figures of the orthodox unity had icy gazes while the murderous intent burned. That one massacre had not been enough. Instead, it united the people of the divine prefecture in resistance. Then they would do another massacre to repress them and clean everyone out. They would kill until the people of the divine prefecture gave up on resisting. 1. As soon as he spoke, a frightening aura pressed down, shrouding Taishang City. The mighty masses of strong cultivators flooded down to start the bloodshed in the city, turning the wrong into right. The strong figures of the divine prefecture had icy gazes. 1. They carry fatal weapons, and murder grows in their hearts. The human realm and empty divine realm are invading. Even if they had consciences before, this kind of environment will destroy your humanity, an elder stated loudly. Cultivators of the divine prefecture, toss away your fantasies. Kill to stop killing. Those from another sect will have different hearts. If I surrender and die with injustice, then I'd rather die on the battlefield. Even if I die, I'll have no regrets. The voices rose in waves. They all had the feeling of tragic heroes and stimulated the resistant spirit of the cultivators in Taishang City. All the cultivators released their powers, and their bodies shot into the air, ready to face the orthodox unity's attack. Beams of destructive attacks have already descended from the dome of the sky. The cultivators of Taishang City also attacked. Instantly, there was a frighteningly destructive storm in the sky above the city. Kill. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The yell of kill shook the sky on the battlefield. Led by the orthodox unity, the strong figures charged into the city like a ferocious tiger coming down the mountain. The alliance of independent cultivators of the divine prefecture had difficulty resisting quickly. In a short time, many people died. This kind of battle was extremely destructive. At that time, countless legions suddenly appeared in different directions of the sky above Taishang City. Pressure weighed down. They all looked down at the same time. The aura of each legion was frightening. They were all cultivators with very high cultivations. The leaders were all at the near-deity level, and there were quite a few of them. Who are you? The strong figures of the orthodox unity overlooked the battlefield. When they saw the army that had suddenly appeared in the sky, they froze. Their eyes narrowed slightly as they stared at these strong figures. As soon as they spoke, a group of strong figures charged directly at them. Countless beams of sword light appeared in the sky. Like a sword matrix, they tore apart the void and covered the area that they were in. The Imperial Palace Legion. They quickly realized who the newcomers were, and they paled. Even though the orthodox unity was strong, they were not the force directly under the divine human palace. The top legion of the Seven Realms was directly under the Imperial Palace. These cultivators that had arrived were the legion directly under the Donghuang Imperial Palace and Heaven Imperial Palace, who had escaped earlier. Now, they had killed their way here. Boom, a strong aura was released. The air of justice bloomed from their bodies as they cut down with mighty sword chi, but they were flooded instantly. Destructive sword intent directly ripped apart the void, disappearing in a flash. In that instant, the strong cultivators of the orthodox unity transformed instantly into nothingness. They were destroyed in this world, causing the strong figures of the human realm and empty divine realm below them to panic. They did not think they would get besieged by the Imperial Palace Legion here. Retreat. The strong figures of the orthodox unity were decisive and ordered to retreat. However, the entire Taishang city was covered by all the legions. Every direction was blocked off. Kill with no mercy. A voice rang through the air above Taishang city. The strong figures had said this of the orthodox unity before too. Die. Instantly, the murderous yells from the entire Taishang city shook the sky. The strong figures from the legion that had arrived and Taishang city sealed the entire city and started killing. The people of the orthodox unity, human realm, and empty divine realm did not want to fight anymore. They only wanted to kill enough to escape while also calling for reinforcement. But it was utterly useless. This was a one-sided massacre. The people of the orthodox unity wanted to wipe out Taishang city, but instead, they suffered a tragic massacre. Not too long after, the number of cultivators on the battlefield had been reduced greatly. Some of the orthodox unity wanted to surrender, but the people of Taishang city did not accept it. Faced with these murderers, they only had murderous thoughts. Gradually, the battle entered the finishing stage. The strong figures of all the legions went toward the upper sky, starting to take their leave. Futian and the others appeared there and enveloped the strong legions. Then they all vanished. Heavenly Emperor, take us with two, the strong figures of Taishang city who had participated in the battle said at this time. We're willing to go with the Heavenly Emperor, more strong figures said. They were cultivators of the divine prefecture. The relationship between Donghuang the Great and Futian was public knowledge now. It was no longer a secret. There was no difference between following Futian and Donghuang the Great. Okay. Those who are willing to fight, come with me, Futian said. Instantly, most of the people who had fought earlier in Taishang city shot into the sky, joining Futian. They were also collected into Futian's micro-heavenly path world. These people could join Donghuang Diyuan's Revelation Legion and be governed by Donghuang Diyuan. They would still be part of the Divine Prefecture's force in the future. When Futian was leaving, he ran into Donghuang the Great, who had hurried over. He had come to Taishang city after learning about the battle here. You came after all, Donghuang the Great said, sighing inwardly. He was conflicted inside too. He hoped Futian could focus on cultivating, but the situation in the Divine Prefecture now was indeed tragic. Yes. Father, come cultivate in my micro-world, Futian said. I'll take care of the matters in the outside world. Okay. Donghuang the Great nodded. He prepared to let go and hand everything over to Futian. He also entered Futian's micro-heavenly path world to cultivate. This way, he could fight for more time. Futian left this place. The people of Taishang city looked at his receding silhouette, and it was like seeing the light in despair. The Heavenly Emperor and Donghuang the Great would win the War of the Seven Realms. News about the Battle of Taishang city started spreading. The human ancestor and other strong figures learned of it immediately, but by the time they hurried over, Futian and the others had already left. Futian was able to lead a moving army. This was indeed very troublesome. No, the human ancestor said as if sensing something. Return to the human realm. As soon as he spoke, their bodies transformed into beams of light. They vanished from their spot and hurried toward the human realm as if they had sensed something was amiss. The sect leader of the Orthodox unity was by the human ancestor's side. He seemed to understand what the human ancestor meant, and his expression turned uncomfortable. Did the human ancestor think that Futian would lead his army to attack the human realm? Futian did not have much time. If he attacked the human realm, where would he choose to be the target? The sect leader of the Orthodox unity's face paled instantly. A massacre had occurred in the Divine Prefecture, so if Futian wanted to intimidate the forces of the human realm, What would be the best solution? Exterminate the Orthodox Unity. The Orthodox Unity was the #1 clan of the human realm below the divine human palace. Their forces were spread throughout the human realm. Before the gods' ruins continent had appeared in the era of the 6 emperors, the Orthodox Unity already had many near-deity figures. There were also descendants of ancient gods and had a great heritage, so it was extremely strong. The Orthodox Unity had many branches on all the continents of the human realm, while the headquarters of the Orthodox Unity ruled the main city, Orthodox Unity City. It was directly named by the Orthodox Unity, so one could imagine how big the Orthodox Unity's influence was. Within the Orthodox Unity City were practically all from the Orthodox Unity. They controlled all the resources in this city. During this war, the Orthodox Unity had sent out a portion of cultivators to fight, but more people remained within the clan. However, the people who left mostly had high cultivation levels. Now, the entire city was in a state of chaos. The inner circle of the Orthodox Unity was especially panicked. Not long ago, they received news that the Orthodox Unity figures who went to invade the divine prefecture had practically been wiped out and killed. It was not just that the Orthodox Unity had been greatly hurt. Instead, the upper-level figures had practically all been killed. One could imagine what kind of shock the Orthodox Unity was in now. At this moment, the entire Orthodox Unity was in a mess. Strong figures kept coming to and fro under the mighty clan doors. Many cultivators in the city were heading toward the Orthodox Unity too. They wanted to know if the news was accurate. This was like a bolt in the blue for the Orthodox Unity City with great implications. They naturally wanted to know the definite answer. Even if they knew that it might be true, they still did not want to accept it. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Silence. Just then, a voice came from within the doors of the Orthodox Unity and spread throughout the inside and outside of the clan. At the same time, a powerful burst of the Emperor's might radiated out, shaking the hearts of countless cultivators. Great Emperor. Another great emperor has been born in the Orthodox Unity. At that moment, countless strong cultivators were shocked. They seemingly forgot about the panic from earlier. Was there a second great emperor in the Orthodox Unity now, other than the leader? If both emperors were in the Orthodox Unity, they were still the top clan below the human divine palace. Who could shake them? Go do your own thing, the voice said again. When the emperor's might emanated, it seemed to calm people down. The panicking hearts of all the strong cultivators gradually calmed down. Then they prepared to leave and mind their own business. Just then, a terrifying might suddenly came from the dome of the sky. The cultivators of the Orthodox Unity looked up to the sky. The sun was a bit blinding, and many people covered their eyes with their hands, but an even more brilliant divine light shone down. Then they saw a mighty heavenly army descend from the sky. At that moment, their hearts twitched fiercely. This was within the Orthodox Unity. A strong figure in a dark Taoist robe appeared in the sky. His eyes were like a bolt of lightning penetrating the void as he gazed toward the army in the sky. Who has come? Emperor's might radiated from his body and enveloped the vast land. The aggressive emperor's might calmed the cultivators down quite a bit, especially the strong figures of the Orthodox Unity. Their clan had a great emperor. As soon as he spoke, a white-haired figure appeared. When the great emperor of the Orthodox Unity saw the other, his expression changed drastically. Futian used a thought to cover the vast space with the divine power of the Great Path. Time and space seemed to freeze. An extremely brilliant spear appeared above the great emperor's head. This spear shot down directly, passing through the void. Sensing the might of the spear, the Orthodox Unity great emperor's expression dropped, but he felt that time had stopped moving. His divine power wanted to break free, but he had just entered the great emperor plane. How could he fight against Futian? Their divine power was not at the same level at all. The spear shot down and directly penetrated the great emperor's body with a squelch. With a loud boom, it continued down and smashed a grand pavilion of the Orthodox Unity, pulverizing it. The brilliant spear was nailed into the ground, nailing that great emperor's body there in death. The shocking scene before their eyes made all the strong figures inside and outside of the Orthodox Unity to freeze. They had not processed it all yet. Right before their eyes, they had seen a great emperor that had just been created in the Orthodox unity to be nailed to death in the Orthodox unity. After that, the strong figures of the Orthodox unity felt extreme pain in their hearts. They recognized the white-haired youth. It's Yi Futian. The heavenly emperor Yi Futian killed 7 great emperors with one spear and was left unscathed from a battle with the human ancestor and eternal sword lord. He had led his great army to attack the Orthodox unity. Had the strong figures who had wiped out the Orthodox unity in the divine prefecture been Yi Futian's army too? Everyone looked up at the mighty army in the sky whose might was weighing down on the Orthodox unity. Yi Futian's eyes were icy but burned with murderous intent. He waved his hand and ordered, "Kill." Since the human realm's forces had committed massacres in the divine prefecture and heaven realm, then they would kill to stop the killing. He would like to see if the other invasive forces of the human realm still dared to commit bloodshed after he wiped out the Orthodox unity. After Yi Futian spoke, the army attacked, charging towards the Orthodox unity. The strong figures of the Orthodox unity looked at the great emperor nailed to the ground with the spear. Even his divine soul and consciousness had been wiped out. They felt a wave of despair as if even the wind blowing onto their bodies was frigid. Outside the Orthodox unity's doors, the cultivators of the city watched this scene from afar. Even though the Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm, they still could not hold up before the army of an imperial palace. The horrifying army destroyed the Orthodox unity with unstoppable force. The mighty clan was being destroyed without stop. Strong figures kept dying in the sky, and their bodies fell down. The hot sun blazed, but the cultivators of the Orthodox unity city all felt the bone-stabbing coldness. When a breeze blew by, they felt iciness stab into their souls. This battle did not actually last very long, but the inside of the Orthodox unity was covered by corpses. Fresh blood dyed the Orthodox unity red. Meanwhile, the crushed pavilion at the peak of the Orthodox unity was where the scene of the great emperor nailed by the spear was. It was shocking. The #1 clan of the human realm had gotten wiped out. In the distance, extremely strong and domineering emperors might seem to descend. The human ancestor's face appeared in the sky, blocking the sun and covering the entire world. Divine might descended. The human ancestor stared at Yi Futian and said, "Yi Futian, you're too presumptuous." Yi Futian looked up and scanned that face. He collected the grand army into his micro-world and gathered divine power around his body into an extremely horrifying spear. He raised a hand and slapped it forward. Instantly, the long spear shot directly into the sky, stabbing toward that huge face. Boom! The long spear attacked the heavens, and a horrifying crack appeared. It swallowed up the sky, even twisting the face. One portion of the sky had cracked. Yi Futian looked up and scanned the sky, saying, "If the human realm's forces dare to commit atrocities in the divine prefecture again, they will end up like the Orthodox unity." With that, his body vanished directly. After Yi Futian left, dozens of great emperors appeared. They did not dare to come forward earlier and just watched it all happen. Clearly, they could not offend Yi Futian. A desolate feeling rose in the hearts of the cultivators of the Orthodox unity. It seemed that the human realm could not stay safe from this tribulation either. The human ancestors group felt it too. His eyes were frigid. Even though he did not care about the lives of Orthodox unity cultivators, the fact that Yi Futian had wiped out the Orthodox unity still embarrassed him. After all, on the surface, the Orthodox unity was the #1 clan of the human realm. But Yi Futian led an army to the human realm and wiped it out. A great emperor was nailed to death there. This was Yi Futian's message to intimidate the invaders from the human realm. Human ancestor, Yi Futian possesses the micro-world and can move the army with him. This way, he can appear on every battlefield, and it's incredibly disadvantageous to us. If we don't kill Yi Futian, then there will be endless threats, a great emperor said. His voice contained tragic fury. This great emperor who had stepped out was the leader of the Orthodox unity. His Orthodox unity had been wiped out. Among the people who had been killed were the descendants of his family. They had been massacred. Before this, His descendants had also died in the Battle of Taishang City, falling on the battlefield. Other than him, the rest of the Orthodox unity had been killed. The human ancestor glanced at him with indifferent eyes. These were undoubtedly useless words. Could he not realize that himself? However, they had not taken down Yi Futian and Dong Huang the Great in the previous siege on Yi Futian. If the other purposely avoided a head-on fight, it would be almost impossible to kill Yi Futian. This was also why the other dared to be so fearless and presumptuous. It was the prime example of one being fearless because of his skills. Yi Futian had extremely high confidence in his abilities. There was probably no one in the world now who could take down Yi Futian alone. Unless please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The human ancestor looked at the super great emperors behind him and said, "In the future, the law of the heavenly path will be reconstructed. Everything will be reorganized, including how to become gods. Since you all returned, you should also contribute some strength. No need to hide or hold back." He knew that these ancient great emperors had their statuses and were extremely arrogant and lofty. Last time, only the eternal Swordlord had attacked seriously. Many super great emperors had not truly displayed their abilities. All the gods fell silent when they heard the human ancestor's words. If the law of the heavenly path were reconstructed, it would be like the ancient heavenly path era. At that time, there would probably be something like the 8 legions that helped maintain the law in the world. The human ancestor was hinting at them. In addition, they feared the human ancestor. It was the human ancestor who had helped them return. After speaking, the human ancestor then looked below them and said to the cultivators of the Orthodox unity, "Yi Futian called himself the Heavenly Emperor and personally came to commit atrocities in the human realm. He even massacred many innocent cultivators and wiped out the Orthodox unity. It is incredibly cruel. This kind of evil person must be killed by the world. I will lead the people of the 3 realms into an army and sweep across the world under the sword of justice. I hope to reconstruct the law of the world, so the entire world can be a pure land like the human realm. However, many of the heaven realm and divine prefecture cultivators are stubborn and brainwashed by Yi Futian. We can only kill him. I hope the cultivators of the human realm can wield the sword of justice and enter the heaven realm and divine prefecture to help convert the world." The human ancestor's words impelled the cultivators of the Orthodox unity city below, making them feel hatred toward the enemies. They wanted to kill their way into the divine prefecture and bring peace to the world. All the gods watched this quietly. The human ancestor probably did not care about the lives of the people. He wanted the entire world to be under his control and everyone to be his believer. As for what method he took or how many lives were lost, he probably did not care at all. The Orthodox unity had been the #1 clan of the human realm. News of Yi Futian wiping it out quickly spread through all the continents of the human realm. Then the cultivators of all the forces spread it to the battlefields of the heaven realm and divine prefecture, intimidating the invasive forces in the heaven realm and divine prefecture greatly. After that, Yi Futian led his army to appear in various battlefields of the divine prefecture. The 8 great legions swept through everything, killing the invaders of the various continents. The invasive forces of the human realm had run rampant for 3 months, and now, they encountered strong resistance. They did not dare to be reckless anymore. Instead, they even felt panicked, worrying that the great army would descend before them one day and kill them all. The human ancestor also led the gods to encircle and suppress Yi Futian, but Yi Futian never went up against them directly. He always had the army attack in a subtle and covert way before leaving quickly. However, there had almost been a dangerous incident once. Yi Futian had almost been stopped and could not bring his army away. If it had happened, then the human realm would have all of their forces attack Yi Futian's great army, and that would have been very dangerous. Thus, Yi Futian turned to the heaven realm and Buddhist clan, sending the human realm's 3 forces into a state of panic. They did not even dare to act rashly anymore. Finally, the war that had lasted for half a year had calmed quite a bit. It was not like before, where great battles occurred everywhere. Only small scuffles continued without stopping, appearing everywhere. The 3 invasive forces felt the threat and did not dare to act in a high-profile manner anymore. Yi Futian had also sacrificed 3 months for this. In these 3 months, he could have cultivated in isolation for 20 years, but he had to make this sacrifice for the cultivators of the divine prefecture and heaven realm. Now that the war had been reduced greatly, Yi Futian could finally stop cultivating. Yi Futian went to the peak of a black mountain of an empty continent in the original realm. He cultivated alone, not wanting to be disturbed, so he chose this remote area. Donghuang the Great and the others saw Yi Futian in his micro-heavenly path world, but they did not say anything. Yi Futian had only gone through 3 months outside, but they had gone through 20 years in here. This meant that Yi Futian had missed 20 years of cultivation. However, Yi Futian had saved many cultivators. Whether he had made the right or wrong choice could only be answered with time. Donghuang the Great only wished that they would not lose to time. However, when Yi Futian had led the army into battle everywhere, he had not let those on the path of the emperors participate. Their first priority was cultivation. People like Jiyu Dongliu and Donghuang Diyuan did not participate. They stayed in his micro-heavenly path world to cultivate. For them, improving their abilities was the most important task. Nowadays, more and more strong figures in the Great Emperor Plane were on Yi Futian's side. After all, even if they did not count the cultivation time from before, it had been half a year since this war started in the outside world, but 40 years had passed in the micro-heavenly path world. Before this, they had also cultivated for many years with Yi Futian's help. That day, the micro-heavenly path world was already like an entire world. Like the outside world, it had its own world law and spiritual qi. If a random person were thrown into here, they would not even distinguish the worlds clearly. Yi Futian checked everyone's cultivation statuses. The core figures had gradually all entered the path of the emperors. Jiyu Dongliu's cultivation of breaking his path was also becoming progressively complete. If he exited, he would definitely give the world a surprise. There was a divine palace in Yi Futian's micro-world. It had a mountain, a creek, and a lot of foliage. There were some pavilions scattered aesthetically. They were elegant yet stylish and felt like a paradise outside of the world. It was peaceful and beautiful. This was the String Pavilion. At the moment, elegant music was streaming out of the divine palace. It made one feel relaxed and happy. This was only one corner of the micro-world. Many years had passed since Yi Futian had created this micro-world. Over these long years, the micro-world was no longer the barren land from before. The cultivators in here had established their own permanent cultivation lands. The String Pavilion was where Yi Futian and his teacher Hua Fengliu had lived when he was young. Clearly, this was where Hua Fengliu's family lived. His master, mistress, Jiyu, Nianyu, and the others all lived here. The graceful music came from Hua Fengliu. Even if he had wanted to help with the war, he was powerless. Plus, this was Yi Futian's micro-world. There were no conflicts, and Yi Futian would not discuss the conflicts outside with him either. It was long past the time for his master to retire. Yi Futian naturally would not let him worry. 2 maidens were cultivating at the mountaintop of the String Pavilion. The 2 of them had extraordinary temperaments, as if they had already left the mundane world and were heavenly fairies. One of the women's beauty was out of the world. She looked ethereal and clear, completely untainted. The other woman was like the incarnation of a perfect goddess. There was no flaw on her entire body. She was serene and elegant. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Naturally, these 2 women were Hua Qingqing and Hua Jiyu. They had been cultivating together the entire time. Right now, it seemed that the Buddhist voice echoed throughout the mountain. It was Hua Qingqing reciting ancient scriptures for Hua Jiyu. She was like a Buddhist light. The glow of the Buddhist clan shimmered faintly on her body. She was extraordinarily pure and sacred and could not be desecrated. Meanwhile, Hua Jiyu bathed under the Buddhist light and seemed to have entered a miraculous state. She was utterly immersed in cultivation and forgot even herself. Without them realizing it, a white-haired figure landed on the ancient mountaintop. He did not disturb their cultivation and just stood to the side quietly. Hua Qingqing was still reading the Buddhist scripture. Hua Jiyu was still immersed in her meditation and cultivation, completely focused. Yi Futian was like air. No one paid attention to him. He had never been treated like this before. However, he was not angry at all either. Instead, he looked at Hua Qingqing with appreciation. But when he looked at Hua Jiyu, there was more gentle affection. Brother-in-law. A voice traveled into Yi Futian's eardrums. He looked back and saw Nianyu blinking at him in the distance. Even though she was not a little girl anymore, Hua Nianyu still acted like it. After all, judging from her cultivation, her age was still very young. How long have they cultivated for? Yi Futian asked, transmitting his voice to Hua Nianyu. A few decades have passed like a day, Hua Nianyu said. I don't understand what they're cultivating, but it seems that sister's cultivation has reached a critical moment. Then why are you here? Yi Futian asked. I don't know either. It seems to be easier to be enlightened when cultivating here, Hua Nianyu said strangely. My comprehension of cultivation is much clearer too, and I can understand more easily. Is it the effect of the Buddhist voice? Yes. Yi Futian nodded without hesitation. This is the light of enlightenment. Yi Futian's gaze fell upon Hua Qingqing's body as he spoke. Hua Qingqing had been the Buddhist lamp accompanying the Buddha in cultivation. She had listened to the Buddha teaching the scriptures, attending the Buddha for 1,000 years as the ancient Buddha Qingdeng. Then consciousness was born from the Buddhist lamp. In a way, Hua Qingqing's intelligence had been born because of the Buddha. She had been made from intelligence. Nianyu did not understand. She would have to ask Grandpa Xian when she got a chance. Usually, her sister and brother-in-law were very busy and did not have time to pay attention to her, so Hua Nianyu would bother Lord Taixian and the others. At that moment, the Buddhist light faded from Hua Qingqing's body. Her pretty eyes opened, and she gazed in Yi Futian's direction. Then Hua Jiyu also opened her eyes. Her gaze fell upon Yi Futian's body, and she smiled brilliantly. You're back, Hua Jiyu said gently. When did you break your path? Yi Futian asked. The years that you left, Hua Jiyu replied with a smile as if she was talking about something unimportant. Yi Futian had dealt with matters in the outside world for 3 months without returning, but in here, 20 years had passed already. That was why Hua Jiyu said the years that he had been gone for. Jiyu, why did you break the path? Yi Futian's voice was low but gentle. This was his heavenly path world. He was in charge of the world law, while Hua Jiyu was his wife. She did not need to take the risk and break the path. Qingqing is here, so there aren't any dangers, Hua Jiyu said, still smiling gently. Plus, I have my own comprehension from these years and want to cultivate my own path. Is that not allowed? Yi Futian looked towards Hua Qingqing. With Hua Qingqing by his side, he also had a miraculous feeling. It felt just like what Nianyu had said, as if it could bring him to enlightenment. Hua Qingqing was the reincarnation of the Buddhist lamp. Her cultivation was very unique. Yi Futian could feel the light of enlightenment from her Buddhist light. All these years, Hua Qingqing had also been helping Hua Jiyu cultivate. I don't know what you two want. Yi Futian shook his head with a wry smile. How could he really blame Hua Jiyu? He was just a bit worried. Don't worry. Everything is successful, Hua Qingqing replied with a smile. Her voice was gentle and made people believe her fully. Yes. Yi Futian nodded. Qingqing, you have to keep an eye on Jiyu. Don't let her fool around. Hua Qingqing smiled and nodded. Brother-in-law, are you leaving as soon as you're back? Nianyu muttered. Earlier, they had been transmitting their voices. Was her brother-in-law planning on slipping away without even actually talking to her this time? Nianyu, your brother-in-law has many things to do, Hua Jiyu said to Nianyu. Nianyu hung her head, feeling a bit down. Hurry and go cultivate. No need to mind me, Hua Jiyu said to Yi Futian. Naturally, she knew that the most important thing to Yi Futian now was time. Okay. I'll leave after visiting Master and Masteress. Yi Futian nodded. He left after strolling around. He indeed had a lot of matters to handle and had no time to waste at all. After Yi Futian left, Hua Jiyu asked Hua Qingqing, Qingqing, Would it be effective if you helped him cultivate? It's limited. Hua Qingqing shook her head. He has already created his own world and has already reached enlightenment. Even with the blessing of wisdom, it's hard for him to comprehend more. Everything depends on himself. I see. Hua Jiyu nodded. Let us continue cultivating then. Okay, Hua Qingqing said. Then they closed their eyes. The Buddhist voice wrapped around them. It was as if someone was reading the Buddhist scriptures on this divine mountain, making this divine palace seem like an extremely sacred pure land. After Yi Futian visited Hua Jiyu, he went to many other places. He checked over the state of their cultivation and gave some help. Then he left to focus on his own cultivation. Yi Futian focused on cultivation. He had demon beasts under his control in the outside world, so he would know if anything major happened. After he led the army to fight everywhere for 3 months, the War of the Six Realms was not as aggressive as before. Even though war still existed in the Six Realms, it was much more peaceful than before. The invaders from the 3 realms did not dare to kill mindlessly anymore. Time passed quickly. A few decades passed in the snap of a finger. Of course, this was the time in Yi Futian's world. That day, Yi Futian sat cross-legged on a divine mountain in his micro-world. His entire body dazzled, and light flowed across him. In the span of a breath, he seemed to produce limitless vitality. If he spat out a hot breath, it would make the sun hotter. When he spat out a cool breath, it made coldness shroud the world. All of his actions, even his inhale and exhale, could affect the operation of this universe. The sound of his heartbeat seemed to have transformed into the universe's pulse. When he was calm, the universe would run smoothly. When he was angered, the entire universe would be upended. Yi Futian continued to meditate in this quiet state, immersing in it. He seemed to breathe together with the universe. That day, Yi Futian finally opened his eyes and took a deep breath. He did not need to perceive the entire world. Everything had been imprinted in his mind. Nowadays, he was the entire world, the entire universe was him. 70 years. Yi Futian murmured. This time, he had actually spent 70 years cultivating in seclusion. If he added the time from before, it had already been more than 100 years. Of course, 70 years was not even 1 year in the outside world. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. But in Yi Futian's world, dramatic changes had already occurred. With the 40 years after the war had erupted and the 70 years now, more than 100 years had passed already. There had been decades of cultivation before the war had erupted too. One could imagine how many great changes had happened. Even the cultivators that Yi Futian had collected into his micro-world in the 3 months of battles and joined the legions, their cultivation states had improved too. They had become a young force in the 8 legions. As for the core figures who had already entered the path of the emperors, their cultivation states had become even stronger. A batch of great emperors had appeared in the micro-world. Right now, Yi Futian's body in the outside world was also completely brilliant. He radiated with dazzling divine light as if he was no longer a human. Instead, he was the incarnation of the path. Even though he was in the vast void, he still did not seem minuscule. Merely sitting there, he was like the absolute center of that world. Boom! At that moment, Yi Futian's eyes opened, and divine light shot out of his orbs. Even the space here shook because of it with unsteady but intense ripples. There had not been any commotion in all these years. Has the human ancestor returned? Yi Futian thought. Even though it had not been long in the outside world, the human ancestor's true form had always been cultivating and preparing to return at any time. He did not know how he was now. With a thought, Yi Futian's figure vanished. The heavenly imperial city of the heaven realm was now under the rule of the strong figures of the human realm. The force from the human divine palace personally took over. The human realm had connected a space passageway to travel through the 6 realms and conquer the realms more easily. The human realm even constructed many majestic palaces in the heavenly imperial city. Just then, an extremely horrifying divine light suddenly descended from the dome of the sky. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial city all saw it. Many layers of the sky fell from the dome of the heavens, carrying many cultivators and various ancient pavilions and palaces. They stood atop the heavenly imperial palace. The 99 heavens. The cultivators of the heavenly imperial palace felt their heart's pulse. After the heaven realm was conquered, the original cultivators of the heaven realm became the lowest class. Usually, they kept a low profile, but after seeing the 99 heavens reappear in the sky above the heavenly imperial city now, it was like their hearts had been struck. Was the heavenly emperor back? The 99 heavens were not sealed off yet. They saw many cultivator legions appear in the sky above the heavenly imperial city. Their auras were all frightening. Like a heavenly army, every single person had extraordinary temperaments. There were also the generals of each legion in the sky above the grand armies. The cultivators of the heaven realm saw many familiar figures. Great skylords Black and White Almighty were now great emperors. The 4 heavenly kings had entered the great emperor plane now too. Donghuang Diyuan, princess of the divine prefecture, great emperor plane. There were many other people whose bodies were covered with the divine great emperor glow. It was like a group of gods descending. The blinding divine light fell into the eyes of the heavenly imperial city cultivators, shaking their hearts and souls. 1 year after the war had erupted, the heavenly emperor came, bringing a group of gods. It was no longer one or a few great emperors. It was an army of great emperors. The age of gods had finally come. The human ancestor ruled the old gods, the heavenly emperor led the new gods. They gazed to the top of the sky, the peak of the 99 heavens. A white-haired figure stood there, like the master of all gods. His gaze overlooked the lower sky and swept toward the heavenly imperial city. "Retake the heavenly imperial city," he said. "Yes, heavenly emperor." The voices rang throughout the void as the many legions accepted the command simultaneously. After cultivating in the micro-world, they were all incredibly reverent of Futian. He was the god of creation who had created a complete world. He could even rule over time and change the law of time. The heavenly emperor had returned and would rule over the entire world. The strong figures of the human realm all took out their communication items and asked for reinforcement. The 6 grand legions advanced toward the heavenly imperial palace. This was fated to be a battle with no surprises. The gods that Futian led did not attack. They watched the great battle in the heavenly imperial city quietly as everything was destroyed utterly. The strong figures of the human realm were absolutely crushed. What put them in even more despair was that there were no reinforcements. The heavenly army that had returned had not destroyed the transmission matrix, as if letting reinforcement come freely. However, no one came to reinforce them. Clearly, they also knew how frightening these 6 legions were. Coming would probably be suicide. The cultivators of the original heaven realm all witnessed this scene. This time, Futian did not leave. Instead, he just watched how the heavenly army retook the heavenly imperial city. Is the heavenly emperor already able to fight against the gods led by the human ancestor? The people of the heavenly imperial city all thought. Clearly, heavenly emperor Futian did not plan on avoiding battle anymore. He had the 99 heavens reappear in the heaven realm and retook the heavenly imperial palace. He led the group of great emperors in a comeback. He was clearly prepared to declare war. At the peak of the human divine palace of the human realm, the human ancestor was sitting cross-legged while cultivating. That moment, he seemed to sense something and his eyes opened. He looked into the distance. Has he proved his path? The human ancestor murmured softly. He did not think that his biggest opponent would be a junior. But actually, he had always been fighting with this lineage. From the heavenly emperor to the sovereign princess, and now to Futian, it had never changed. Just like how he had had the final victory the last 2 times, the result would be the same this time too. The heavenly emperor and heavenly imperial palace reconstructed the 99 heavens. The heavenly emperor's army swept through the heaven realm. Cultivators all over the heaven realm reacted, following the great army of the heavenly emperor in resistance. They destructed and drove out the human realm cultivators, taking back the territory of the heaven realm like wildfire. Back then, the soldiers of the human realm had conquered almost all of the heaven realm in 3 months without getting blood on their swords. But this time, the heaven realm fought back fiercely. Each of the 6 legions were able to sweep through a corner of the world, let alone doing it together. One could imagine how terrifying it was. Even without looking at the others, just the Revelation Legion contained the backbone of the original Donghuang Imperial Palace. Then after a century of practice and training many new members, they were now an extremely frightening force. Thus, this time was even faster. In many places, the strong figures of the human realm heard the news and began to retreat before they even attacked. They did not dare to loiter. If they continued guarding the place, it would probably only mean death. The Heaven Realm's army were completely merciless towards the invaders. Thus, this battle swept through the Heaven Realm as fast as lightning. In a mere half-month's time, they had retaken most of the Heaven Realm. After the Heaven Realm was retaken, the strong figures that had invaded the Divine Prefecture and Buddhist world also started retreating. They were extremely scattered because they had taken too much territory. If the Heaven Realm's army came by now, they would not be able to hold up at all. They had to gather their strength together first before they could fight against the Heaven Realm's army. The majestic Heavenly Palace loomed in the 99 heavens. Heavenly Emperor Yi Futian stood at the peak pavilion of the Heavenly Palace. And as the Heavenly Emperor's father, Donghuang the Great stood to his side. Empress Hua Jiyu and Donghuang Diyuan sat on the left and right of Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great. Godfather Yu too stood in the first spot below the Heavenly Emperor. Below that was the String Emperor and Book Deity. They had been followers of Yi Futian's mother. Many strong figures sat below the steps. Some also stood there. Those with seats were the great emperors from the Buddhist clan. The Buddha of the Buddhist clan was the senior of both Donghuang the Great and Yi Futian, so he naturally had the respect he deserved. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The strong figures from the Divine Prefecture, Heaven Realm, and those who followed Yi Futian all stood. After all, Yi Futian and Donghuang the Great were up there. However, when dozens of people stood there, the scene was still extremely spectacular. These people were all strong figures who had entered the Great Emperor plane. The Heaven Court of the Heavenly Palace were practically all great emperors. They were a true Great Emperor Legion. Further down was the vast land of the 99 heavens. The 6 great legions were there. Each legion had their own camps and were further divided into smaller legions. They were scattered but organized and had their own leaders. This kind of scene was honestly very breathtaking. The highest powers of the 3 realms were gathered here. It was also the Heavenly Emperor's first time officially gathering everyone here to discuss matters. Everyone had come. No one was missing. I pay my respects to your majesties, Heavenly Emperor and Donghuang. Just then, Yu Tu turned toward Yi Futian and took the lead in bowing. With Yu Tu leading them, everyone below instantly responded and bowed. I pay my respects to your majesty the Heavenly Emperor, your majesty Donghuang. Instantly, the earth-shaking voices resounded through the 99 heavens, making all the strong figures feel their blood bubbling hotly. After cultivating in the micro-world, their group had already reached this strong state without realizing it. Yu too had a solemn expression, but he was full of ineffable emotions inside. His young master had finally reached this step. Being bowed to by various gods was such a shocking scene. If she could see today's scene, she must feel gratified. Next, they only had one goal: kill the human ancestor, take down the human realm, dark world, and empty divine realm, and unify the 7 realms. Godfather, Yi Futian called. Then he looked at everyone and said, "No need to bow." Yi Futian was still very kind, but when they looked at the strong figure in the throne, everyone realized that this junior was already standing at the pinnacle of the world. Even Donghuang the Great and the Buddha of the 6 emperors were willing to give him this seat. Among the crowd, many cultivators had had rivalries with Yi Futian before, such as Great Emperor Di Hao and the others. Yi Futian did not kill them, but they still had restrictions. Imprints had been planted in them with special tactics. They were kept alive because they still had some value and could be used. Among the many strong figures from the 18 domain manors of the Divine Prefecture, there were also many old friends of Yi Futian who felt very emotional. As for those from the Ziwei Imperial Palace, they felt genuinely happy and proud for Yi Futian when seeing today's grandiosity. Their palace lord had now reached the peak of the cultivation world. Probably even the evil emperor and dark sovereign would not fight against Futian anymore. His actual opponent was probably only the human ancestor. Futian did not think what everyone was thinking. For him, he did not feel excited or honored at how glorious this event was. Instead, he only felt the pressure. It was not the pressure of sitting in this divine throne. Instead, it was because he now decided everyone's fates. The human ancestor was someone who wanted to replace the heavenly path. He fought against Futian's great-grandfather and killed his mother. He was not confident when facing such an opponent, but he had no other path to take. When he was by himself, he was able to lose. But now, he could no longer lose. Too many people's lives were connected with his. Even now, there were many faces before him. Many people are clear about the reasons behind the War of the Seven Realms, but some don't actually know, Futian began saying now from his divine throne. When the war erupted, I once fought against the human ancestor. I discovered that it was only a physical clone and not his true form. The true human ancestor had once killed the heavenly emperor and my mother. Even though the 6 realms formed a fragile equilibrium, it was always under the human ancestor's control. He has always been plotting secretly, letting the ancient gods return. When his true form returns, I'm afraid he will replace the heavens. When the gods returned and declared the invasive war, the people who followed him thrived. Those who went against him died. The human ancestor says that he oversees justice, but he started bloodshed. If he really controls the heavens, it will be a disaster. No one can predict what will happen at that time. Everyone here are mostly core figures from the Buddhist clan, divine prefecture, and heaven realm. Many things can go unsaid. However, I don't have absolute confidence in this battle. No one knows what level the human ancestor's true form has reached. If you all go to battle with me, you will be taking a huge risk. Thus, even if you wish to step back today, I will give you one last chance. You can choose to leave. Futian spoke while gazing at the crowd. After this, he would declare the ultimate battle against the human realm. Many people would die in this ultimate battle. He was giving everyone one last chance. Before this, these people had all cultivated in his micro-world and had received many benefits. Thus, this was everyone's final chance to choose. No one was born with the duty to save the world, let alone the fact that this battle was still decided by the top figures. All of these cultivators were just cannon fodder, at most. If possible, Futian was not even willing to have them participate in battle. Letting the great emperors fight in the ultimate battle was enough. However, the human ancestor wanted to control the 7 realms. He ordered all the realms to go to war, sweeping everyone into the battleground. Thus, there had to be a force like this in order to resist the invasion. Otherwise, the 3 realms would be like a handful of sand. It would be conquered and invaded by the other side. The group of strong figures was silent for a moment. Then someone stated loudly, "I'm willing to go to war with the Heavenly Emperor. I'm willing to go to war with the Heavenly Emperor." All the voices resounded in the air. Many of the cultivators here were from Emperor-level forces. The majority were all willing to do this. Futian's gaze looked around below. The deafening voices sounded in the heavens. However, he realized that many people still did not speak out. The spirited voices seemed to have covered those who were swayed, but they were still under Futian's stare. He extended a hand, signaling for the people to be quiet. Then he continued saying, "I am not choosing those who are willing this time. Instead, I am giving people a chance to step back. You all can be rest assured. You've all contributed in the earlier battles. Those who are willing to step back today will not be questioned." There were still no voices. It seemed that no one dared to take the lead. After a moment, someone finally stepped out, but he still did not speak. Instead, he took a few steps toward the back, separating from the great army. Gradually, others retreated after him. Their cultivation had improved greatly in the past few years. Many thought that this was already enough, and after calming down, they indeed felt that there was no need to continue fighting. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. For them, whether it was the human ancestor ruling the 7 realms or Yi Futian, it had a great influence on the 7 realms, but it probably would not be too different for them personally. There was no need to gamble. If they lost the battle, they would lose their lives. More and more people stepped back. There were quite a few from the 6 legions. Many of them were the ones who had joined later. They had joined the army passionately when they had been invaded and felt hatred and anger. Other than that, many people from the Heaven Realm and Divine Prefecture also withdrew. Some of the Divine Prefecture's top forces were among them, including strong figures of domain chiefs' manners, such as the chief manor of the Shangqing domain. The most loyal were the believers of the Ziwei Imperial Palace who had always followed Yi Futian and the Buddhists. There were also direct forces under the Donghuang Imperial Palace. They all had their own beliefs. Yi Futian watched all of this quietly. As more and more people withdrew, this gradually reached a certain scale. It did not stop until some time later. As expected, those who benefit but lack faith are more likely to betray, Yi Futian thought when he saw this scene. For example, some of the domain chiefs' manners and top forces of the Divine Prefecture had been the upper level of the Divine Prefecture, but still, many of them withdrew. Anyone else? Yi Futian continued. Some more scattered people stepped back. Finally, a moment later, no one moved again. Yi Futian was a bit disappointed but also glad. He was disappointed that many people had withdrawn. He was glad because, compared to the overall group, they were still the minority. He was not perfect. Even though he did not wish to see people die in battle and gave them a chance to withdraw, deep down, he was still disappointed in the people who withdrew. This was unavoidable as a human. With a thought, countless beams of divine light shone down from the sky, transforming into many imprints. They fell onto the cultivators who had chosen to leave. "Your Majesty," someone yelped. "Heavenly Emperor, you promised not to question us." They were a little panicked at this scene. Earlier, they had believed in Yi Futian's words, which was why they dared to step back. But now, Yi Futian left an imprint. "This was do not worry," Yi Futian said, his voice resounding in the void. This caused everyone to quiet down and let out a breath. In that previous moment, they had thought that Yi Futian would punish them. Even though they believed that Yi Futian was not that kind of person, they were still a bit afraid. "Your Majesty, why did you?" someone opened their mouth to ask. "There will only be 2 results after this battle, victory or defeat," Yi Futian said. "If this battle ends in defeat, then those who choose to fight may very well die. They will die for their own faith while you all can live and continue cultivating. If it is the other result and we win this battle, then I will reform the world law, and the divine positions will belong to the cultivators with faith." When he finished speaking, countless beams of light fell again, landing on the cultivators who had chosen to stay. Those who chose to stay clearly had their own beliefs. They were willing to gamble their lives and continue to fight. If Yi Futian managed the world law in the future, then the people who sat in the divine seats would be chosen from them. This meant that those who chose to leave would forever lose the chance at a divine position. Their hearts seemed to be struck by lightning at that moment. The age of gods was coming, while the great emperor plane was a mutual goal that everyone pursued. Did they lose the right to that? "Go now." Yi Futian waved his hand and a spatial door opened in the 99 heavens. Many cultivators felt a little muddled as they stepped into the spatial door and left the micro-world. They knew that Yi Futian was not just trying to intimidate them. If Yi Futian won this battle, he would be the ruler of the world law. Of course, he would determine who possessed the divine positions. Those who had already reached the top of Yi Futian's micro-world felt even more complicated emotions inside. Not too long after, that group left the micro-world. Other than those who did not dare to leave, all that remained had their own beliefs. "Next, what you all must do is focus on cultivating. It's best if we don't need you to participate in battle," Yi Futian announced. Everyone felt emotional in their hearts. The Heavenly Emperor really did have a fresh personality. "I was not trying to scare people with my words. If we lose, you all might die. Thus, if we die, then you all should abandon the fighting and live on," Yi Futian said. "Go now." The strong figures all bowed and then retreated gradually. Of course, some people were still on the steps because of their close relationship with Yi Futian, even though they were not great emperors. Yi Futian's eyes fell upon someone and asked, "Qingyuan, why did you not step onto the path of the emperors?" Xia Qingyuan could definitely step onto the path of the emperors with his help, but she still had not stepped onto that path. "Heavenly Emperor, I won't be able to change the battlefield of the Great Emperor Plane even if I do step onto the path of the emperors. On the other hand, if I stay below the Great Emperor Plane, I can save many people if war erupts," Xia Qingyuan replied. She cultivated the path of life and death. Yi Futian nodded slightly and looked at her. It felt a little strange to hear her call him Heavenly Emperor. Most of the people agreed with Xia Qingyuan's thoughts. The total number of great emperors was small. Hence, the situation would be very messy if the cultivators apart from the great emperors started an all-out war. Xia Qingyuan could save many lives if she were to join the war as a combat medic and rescue the injured. Many of the great emperors saw her in a new light as she had stopped herself walking on the path of the emperors because of this, especially the Buddhists, who put their hands before her and recited the Buddhist sutra with the sound of Buddha. At the end of the day, this war will be decided by the elites. Thus, I will do all I can to prevent a battle between lower cultivation level combatants from breaking out. I am planning to infiltrate the human realm to see if I can sneak a look at the human ancestors' real body's cultivation level, Yi Futian uttered. Now that his cultivation had improved to the next level, invading the human divine palace was considered a trial. He would not mind going on a killing spree if the opportunity presented itself. This operation is a little too risky. Please reconsider the idea, Your Majesty, Yu Tu suggested. Although he was Yi Futian's godfather, he had been greeting the latter as his young master. But he had since changed the form of address of the second mentioned to Heavenly Emperor or Your Majesty during an oral address at that moment. "I don't agree with this idea as well," the String Emperor chimed in. Did Yi Futian want to infiltrate the human divine palace as an experiment? If the actual body of the human ancestor at the human divine palace were to awake, it would undoubtedly be hazardous. The people who had disagreed first were followers of Yi Futian's late mother. They were the true loyal retainers of the sovereign princess back then. Hence, they immediately freaked out upon hearing his idea since he was the only progeny of his mother. If the human ancestor's real body had recovered, he would have shown up here by now. Even the likes of Ji Wudao could retreat unscathed after invading the human divine palace back then, Yi Futian explained. Furthermore, even if the human ancestor almost had a full recovery, he might not necessarily be capable of keeping me there. The voice of Yi Futian was filled with absolute confidence. With his current strength, it would be an arduous task to trap him as long as he did not let down his guard. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. I second that, Donghuang the Great, who sat beside Yi Futian, stated. If the human ancestor did not recover, this might very well be a chance for us. Should any unforeseen dangers befall him, he could flee from the scene right away. So, I don't see a problem here. I think it is worth a shot. Since Donghuang the Great was the father of Yi Futian, he would never allow his son to get into any difficult situation. However, the latter was bearing the responsibility of preserving 7 realms. Being the one who sat on the divine throne, he should perform his duties as Heavenly Emperor. Since the father and son duo, Donghuang the Great and Yi Futian, had spoken, everyone remained taciturn. All of them could tell that Yi Futian wished to avoid an all-out war as much as possible. It would be better to solve the issue by himself, while the second best outcome would be the great emperors settling the conflicts among themselves. The last thing he wanted to see was the common people living in the 7 realms being involved in their war. You're right, father. It is definitely worth trying. Don't worry. I'll be careful, Yi Futian replied. The people at the scene nodded after hearing that. Even Yu Tu did not insist on discouraging him anymore. Millimeter? Yi Futian knitted his brows together all of a sudden. Then he stretched his hand and waved it. After which, a projection appeared before his eyes. A group of cultivators with extraordinary temperament showed up around the heavens gate outside the 99 heavens. They were all great emperor plane beings who were surrounded by divine light as they looked at the 99 heavens. "We would like to have an audience with Heavenly Emperor." The voice of the one leading the great emperors could be heard announcing that. His deafening voice shook the 99 heavens and traveled to the heavenly palace. Everyone inside could listen to him. "Let's go and check it out," Futian said. With a thought, a door materialized in front of the heavenly palace. Then he stood up and took a step forward to exit the door. The other cultivators followed him behind and walked out of it as well. At once, a similar spatial door appeared around the area of the Heaven's Gate. Futian and the others could be seen getting out of it. After taking a step forward, Futian and his subordinates turned to stare at the great emperors outside the 99 heavens, who they had never seen before. Furthermore, Futian could sense something unusual about the aura emanated from the great emperors. Now that he had reached the realm of the heavenly path, he could know why he had this kind of feeling. It was because this group of great emperors was not from around here. They were beings from another universe, also known as extraterrestrial beings. "State your business," Futian piped while staring at the great emperors. The leading figure, who looked in their 40s, was clothed in splendor with a dignified appearance. Their body was surrounded by a golden divine light, giving off a highborn vibe as if they had an extraordinary background. "I presume that your majesty already knew we are from the outer realms," the leader of the outer realms great emperors answered. "It seems like your majesty has a conflict with the gods of the human realm. We had come from afar and witnessed this war. But we do not wish to see it continue like this. So, we would like to if your majesty wants some help." Futian was confused after hearing that. Then he looked at them and asked, "Help? Do you want to participate in this war?" "If it is your will, then yes," the other party replied. Futian was curious why they were so confident that they could be of help to him. "How do you plan to do that? What is your condition?" Futian questioned. If these people were genuinely trying to help out of goodwill, he would not mind having a few extra hands. But he knew for a fact that nothing would come free in life. These individuals were extraterrestrial beings who came from another universe. He still had no way of telling if they were friends or foes. But according to his speculation, they would most likely be his enemies. An outsider would never be of like mind with them. How could these people, who had come from afar, claim to have no agendas at all? Back then, his mother had reconstructed the heavenly path because she came to know the existence of other universes. Her ultimate wish was to prove her path as the apex cultivator to protect this universe. "We will not ask for any unusual term. We want your majesty to open a cross-universe space passage so that the cultivators from our world can come over as reinforcements," the person noted. Yet, Futian furrowed his brows at that person's words. The other party requested him to open a space passage that would connect two different universes so that their forces could come over here. Listening to this term alone was enough to let him imagine multiple possible outcomes. What if the other party used this space passage that connected two universes for invasion? Most importantly, he had no clue about the strength of the strongest cultivators from other universes yet. Therefore, he had been looking for the answer to several questions. What was the summit of cultivation? Did the finishing line even exist? Nevertheless, he could tell it was rather difficult for the other party to open a space passage that could cross between universes. At the very least, they still could not pull it off yet. Hence, they offered to work with him. "I want to know more about your universe," Donghuang the Great queried as he took a step forward. "Also, were the 7 great emperors who passed away previously one of yours?" Donghuang the Great became vigilant right after hearing the words of the other party. If the space passage that could connect both universes were to be opened, the cultivators from their world could cross over to this world. So, this request should never be accepted. And that was the reason he wanted to know their overall strength and the extent of the ability of their strongest cultivators. After hearing his father's question, Futian recalled the 7 great emperors he killed in one hit. This group of great emperors had traveled together. So, their powers must be from the same source. Was there a ruler-class individual in their universe? Were these cultivators the subordinates of a ruling class like the 7 great emperors Yi Futian had killed previously? What was their true purpose of wanting to open a space passage that could connect between universes? Were they trying to help him out with no hidden agenda? While Yi Futian was looking at them, their leader replied, "Yes. We had some conflicts previously, but we should let the past be the past. Please pay it no heed, Your Majesty." As expected, all these people were from the same force. The 7 individuals were wielders of the power of judgment. They could be considered the judges of an elite organization. The 7 of them were a single entity. These people could be from an extremely powerful force. Futian, our universe had gone through the collapse of the heavenly path, causing the decline of our cultivation world. However, it isn't the case for other universes. If they were to continue their growth, their overall strength could be higher than expected. If we were to open a space passage that could connect both of our universes, they might be a greater threat than the human ancestor. Donghuang the Great notified Yi Futian through telepathy in concern. "I got it." Yi Futian nodded. He understood this very well, even without Donghuang the Great's reminder. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. To open a cross-cosmos portal for cultivators from an unknown universe would be equivalent to bringing disaster upon themselves. We will settle this problem among ourselves. Thanks for your offer, Yi Futian declined. All of you have traveled from a distant universe. I will welcome you with open arms if you are here as our guests. But if you try anything funny like what the 7 great emperors did previously, I will never hesitate to annihilate you immediately. After hearing Yi Futian's words, the other party furrowed their brows in displeasure. They had been observing the situation in this universe ever since they arrived here, only to find a declined world where the total number of great emperors was very little. Initially, they had the intention of saving this world. After opening the space passage that connected the 2 universes, the cultivators of this world could finally see the true divine relic. With that, this world would have a united law at last. Yet, little did they expect that Yi Futian would reject them and even dared to threaten them. "You know very well about the current situation in the 7 realms, Your Majesty. Why are you so quick to reject us? Are you not afraid that we might look for other people to work together?" that person remarked. They had approached Yi Futian because the latter was at a disadvantage. So, they had assumed that he might probably agree to receive their help. On the other hand, it was nearly impossible that the human ancestor would cooperate with them since their goal was the same as his. Right after he finished speaking, an overwhelming divine light glowed from the eyes of Yi Futian, who emanated a palpable rage all around himself. Immediately, the color of the sky changed while frightening divine thunder rumbled violently. Just then, the divine light of sun and moon shone and covered the group of great emperors. "Are you trying to threaten me?" Yi Futian's voice was as loud as divine thunder traveling across the void, shaking the atmosphere and sky. As the great path roared, every motion in this realm seemed to be brimming with the heavenly rule power as if he was the great path himself. A hint of watchfulness flashed across the eyes of the group of great emperors after sensing an intimidating threat from Yi Futian. The expression of the leader's face turned solemn after realizing that they were a little too impatient. They should avoid angering him since they were in his territory at the moment. "No, we wouldn't dare to think of it. We came here with good intentions, thinking that perhaps we could ally. Since things are not working out for the both of us, we shall take our leave first," the leader uttered as they felt the pressure of the god's might on them. Instantly, an epiphany moment hit them that they could not afford to provoke Yi Futian in this universe. So, they should retreat at once. "Hold on!" Yi Futian shrieked. Their blood ran cold, and they stared at him. "You are coming and going as you like. What are you taking me for?" Yi Futian demanded. "You did not answer our question yet. I want to know your purpose in requesting a space passage between our universes to be opened." Right after he spoke, the boundless sky and earth were covered by his divine power. At that moment, the entire dimension seemed to be frozen. None of them could leave this place without breaking a sweat. "What is the meaning of this, Your Majesty?" the leader commented. Yi Futian set his eyes on them. Donghuang the Great moved forward from behind and unleashed the divine power of revelation. In that instant, The group of great emperors had gotten their divine powers restricted before they could react. It was even harder to release their divine powers on top of the pressure from Yi Futian's god's might. Jiyu, it's your turn, Yi Futian shouted. Hua Jiyu nodded. She understood his order tacitly because they were husband and wife. An invisible divine power permeated the atmosphere. It was formless and intangible, somewhat similar to the divine power of revelation. And it could invade the enemy's spiritual will in a flash. After having their divine powers retrained, their spiritual wills were blocked by a powerful barrier. They could feel an invisible and colorless wall covering their spirit domains and sealing them. Divine power of colorless realm. A divine light surrounded Hua Jiyu. Her garments were fluttering while her black hair flowed in the wind when she charged her divine power with all her might. This was the divine power that Hua Jiyu and Hua Qingqing gained enlightenment on together. The latter had helped the former with Buddhist doctrines, and she eventually developed the divine power of colorless realm that could suppress the spirit domain of other cultivators. Under the suppression of the divine power of revelation and the divine power of colorless realm, all the great emperors lost their combat powers completely. On top of that, Yi Futian pressurized them with his emperor's might, causing them to be deprived of any chance to retaliate. The entire dimension seemed to be frozen. The crowds in Heavenly Imperial City who saw the happening there were dumbfounded. Under the restraint of the great emperors from Heavenly Imperial Palace, the group of arrogant foreign great emperors could not even budge an inch. Although the enemies were a group of great emperors, they were completely at the mercy of Yi Futian, Donghuang the Great, and Hua Jiyu. To think that the three of them would be so powerful after joining forces. At that time, Hua Jiyu unleashed her spiritual energy with all her might and invaded the opponent's spiritual will. Yi Futian activated his eye spell to destroy their defenses. Some time had passed, but the suppression of their divine powers had not diminished. However, Hua Jiyu had already gotten the information she was looking for. Her eyes narrowed into crescent shapes when she looked at Yi Futian and informed telepathically, they wanted to build a space passage to establish a connection between their universe and ours. Then they planned to let the divine power of the law of their heavenly path invade and occupy our universe. With that, they will become the sovereign of this universe. The look of Yi Futian's eyes turned icy. So these people had evil schemes, after all. To think that they wanted to open a space passage between both universes. If that were to happen, they would become a greater threat than the human ancestor since the former was a universe of cultivators. Finish them off. A murderous gleam flashed across Yi Futian's eyes. Yu Tu made his move right after Yi Futian gave the command. A pitch-black demonic blade was unsheathed and slashed the figures of those great emperors in half. Those extraterrestrial cultivators could not even defend themselves after being suppressed by the three of them. The divine power of revelation and colorless realm restrained them, causing them to be incapable of doing anything. The ominous black demonic blade could cut even the void, creating cracks in the process. Right then, the bodies of the great emperors were reduced to nothing before they could even let out a shriek after being slain. To think that the group of foreign great emperors would be exterminated on the spot. This was not the first time Yi Futian saw his godfather in action. Domineering and ruthlessness were the attributes of a demonic cultivator. The people in Heavenly Imperial City were trembling in fear after witnessing that. Even though they were great emperor plane cultivators, they were easily slaughtered without delay. The Heavenly Emperor was confident in his decision-making and would never show mercy to his enemies. Yi Futian remained composed the entire time. Since they would eventually show their true colors and bring harm to this world, it would be disastrous to leave them be. Naturally, ending their lives would be the best course of action. Plus, it could serve as an intimidation to the cultivators from another universe so that they would behave themselves a little. He did not care if doing this would offend the people from the other universe since they had already planned to build a space passage between two universes for their conquest. It was already beyond the matter of offending the other party. If they had the capability, they would have invaded this universe by that time. Jiyu, what is the cultivation system of their world? What is their overall strength? Yi Futian asked Hua Jiyu. Their cultivation system is a little different from ours, but it will reach the same destination. In the end, they will have to gain enlightenment on the great path and the power of heavenly law. Their highest cultivation level is that of heavenly immortal, which is equivalent to the great emperor plane, Hua Jiyu explained. However, their world is more advanced and complete than ours, like the Age of the Gods where Tiantian army would rule the world. There are different planes to their heavenly immortals: heavenly immortal, immortal king, and supreme immortal. It looks like their immortal king is a parallel to our super great emperor. Meanwhile, their supreme immortal counterpart is our supreme being, Donghuang the Great Mermaid. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. That should be the case. Hua Jiyu nodded. The reason they want to open a space passage to our universe is so that their supreme immortal can cross over and terraform our world. According to their memories, the supreme rulers of different worlds and universes would cultivate the heavenly laws unique to their home. Therefore, they could not rule over the heavenly laws of other worlds. That's why they want to reprogram the laws of other worlds into theirs first. Yi Futian nodded. Supreme being should be similar to the nature of his current cultivation level. He was the master of the law inside his world. For instance, he could even change the law of time in there, but he could not do the same in the outer realms or other worlds, except if he devoured that world. This might be the actual purpose of those people. The expressions of the crowd turned gloomy slightly, as they had never expected that there would be threats other than the human ancestor. And to their surprise, those people were from another universe. Jiyu, what do you want to say? Yi Futian questioned after noticing that Hua Jiyu looked a little hesitant to speak. By right, the worlds between the universes should be isolated from one another, so they would not know the existence of other worlds. Yet it seems like our location has been leaked, Hua Jiyu commented in perturbation. In other words, there might be more than one universe that would find us. Yi Futian immediately understood what Hua Jiyu tried to imply. So this would be one of the results following the collapse of the Great Path. Yeah. Hua Jiyu nodded. Yi Futian went silent for a while. It seemed like the only way out would be his attainment of the Supreme Being plane. In retrospect, the worry of his mother back then actually had a legitimate reason. If he could create a world with his micro-heavenly path, it would not be unthinkable to believe in the existence of the multiverse. From analyzing his inner world, he could conclude that every world and universe had its respective rules and laws. In fact, the way time would work in various universes could all be different. Since the locations of each dimension were not the same, it was nearly impossible for any of them to converge. But things had changed since the coordinate of their world had been exposed. Let's go back, Yi Futian commanded. Futian, are you going to the human realm now? Donghuang the Great queried. That's right. Yi Futian nodded. Okay. I will meet you up at the border outside the human realm, Donghuang the Great informed. Although he was not against Yi Futian's invasion into the enemy's territory, he would still be there as reinforcement. If anything were to befall the latter, the former could rescue him. I'm following you, Hua Jiyu added. Her strength was greatly increased since she had gained enlightenment on the divine power of the colorless realm. The divine power of the colorless realm was extremely formidable, a class of its own. In the world of Buddhism, the colorless realm was above the desire realm and form realm. Colorless realm was devoid of any material form, which aligned to the Buddhist saying, all is vanity. Hua Jiyu's divine power of colorless realm was derived from her understanding of colorless realm. At the activation of the divine power, there would not be any physical matter in her world, it was absolute nothingness. This was an immensely powerful divine power that, when cultivated to its pinnacle, could wield an ability that was fundamentally equal to the peerless power of the void in essence. Nevertheless, Hua Jiyu had not reached that tier as of yet. Besides, her current cultivation level was still lower than Donghuang the Great's. Okay. Yi Futian bowed his head. He could tell how powerful the divine power of revelation and colorless realm was after witnessing them earlier. So long as they did not enter the border of the human realm, the both of them would not encounter any danger. Hence, he was not worried about their safety. All right, let's make our move now, Donghuang the Great stated. Millimeter. Yi Futian turned to look at the others and ordered, "The rest of you should return to the heavenly imperial palace first. We won't be gone for long." "Yes, Your Majesty." Everyone at the scene nodded. Yi Futian was slowly holding an absolute authority over time unknowingly. And it should be accredited to all the cultivators who had cultivated inside the world created with his micro-heavenly path for years. The feat of creating a world was not something just anyone could pull off. If one were to look at this aspect alone, he had long since surpassed his father, Donghuang the Great. That was why everyone agreed with what Donghuang the Great had said: if there were anyone who could reach the Supreme Being plane, it would be Yi Futian. Right then, the three of them transformed into 3 dots of lights and disappeared into thin air. The people in Heavenly Imperial City who caught sight of it were taken aback and thought, "Are His Majesty and Donghuang the Great heading toward human divine palace now?" Had the power balance of the world that was divided into the 6 realms among the 6 great emperors been changed? Did the times slowly transition into the era of the rivalry between the human ancestor and heavenly emperor? The people in the world could hardly catch up with the speed of the ever-changing times. The duration was too short for the people of the outer realms. A frightening pressure permeated the entire area of the human divine palace in the human realm. An authority of heaven emanated from the top floor of the human divine palace. The human ancestor was cultivating while sitting in a lotus position. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and looked into the distance. "He is coming," a voice could be heard from the sky announcing loudly. Following that, 3 silhouettes could be seen descending from the sky. The 3 of them had temperaments incomparable to any other. Each of them were emitting overpowering auras as if they were holding the authority of the heavens. Simultaneously, the human ancestor stood up and covered the whole human divine palace with his divine consciousness to convey a message. The entire human divine palace was heavily guarded, including the perimeter of the courtyards and the interior. All the cultivators below the great emperor plane had sought shelter inside the principal throne room of the palace complex, as they had predicted something huge was about to happen. However, the human ancestor and the gods were protecting the palace at that moment. Who could possibly make them brace themselves for the approaching enemy? Back then, Ji Wudao had invaded the human divine palace when the human ancestor was not around. At that time, the gods did not even show up yet. Suddenly, the sky above the human divine palace trembled violently, which was followed by the appearance of a spine-chilling spatial storm. The dimensional vortex blustered against the atmosphere that brimmed with an unparalleled divine power of space. A while later, the intimidating spatial storm suddenly turned into a space passage. At the other end of the space passage, a white-haired god with divine light surrounding him showed up there. The covering of the 9 dragons' true chi further enhanced his stateliness. And that silhouette was none other than Yi Futian. As he stood there silently, the atmosphere around him beamed with divine light. Just then, a phantasm manifested like the guardian of the sun and moon. He had an extraordinary temperament, making him look even better than before. With a thought, Yi Futian controlled many light dots to cross over from the other side of the space passage to the firmament above the human divine realm. The brilliant light dots appeared in multiple positions that spanned across the boundless sky like the sun, the moon, and the stars. Right after, all the lights turned into humanoid silhouettes. All these figures took the form of Yi Futian as if they were his exterior incarnations. All these dazzling silhouettes were formed with the law of the Great Path. One of them radiated a scorching divine light of the sun, while the other emitted a freezing divine light of the moon. They stood next to each other as if they were the representative of the sun and the moon. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Every single one of them was the avatar of the heavenly path. Shush. The 2 avatars of the sun and the moon fired terrifying divine light and permeated the entire human divine palace with their powers. Immediately, they turned themselves into the sun and the moon, effusing the divine power of yin and yang while slowly covering the whole human divine palace. Whoosh! At that point, a light screen appeared in the human divine palace out of the blue. It was a sword realm. Eternal Sword Lord sat in a lotus position on top of one of the palaces. Raising his head to look at the sky, he unleashed his sword realm. The moment the divine light of sun and moon touched the sword realm, the latter was eroded. Following that, another avatar of the heavenly path hurled a glaring golden spear while the other one threw a glowing punch at the sword realm. Immediately, the atmosphere quivered, and the sword realm was torn into pieces. Eternal Sword Lord furrowed his brows at the sight of it. Yi Futian and Dong Huang the Great had fled from the scene during the previous conflict. So he thought that his sword could eliminate that man this time. But who would have thought that Yi Futian could crush his sword realm with just a mere avatar of the heavenly path when the former's real body did not even show up yet? Lifting his head to stare at the sky, he shot divine light out of his eyes. Sword will pervaded the air when he stretched his hand to the firmament and swung it. In the blink of an eye, a sword river dispersed across the sky and charged toward Yi Futian's avatars of the Great Path. Then, the divine power of Yin contacted the sword river, causing a freezing will to dominate the dimension as if the entire spacetime was frozen. Nevertheless, it could not restrain the domineering sword. Eventually, the sword traversed in between dimensions as though it surpassed the power of time and space. Bangs similar to earth-shattering sounds could be heard when the sword collided with the avatars of the Great Path. While this was taking place, Yi Futian raised a sword with his hand from the other end of the space passage and thrust forward. A slash that traveled across the fabric of spacetime came flying toward Eternal Swordlord. After sensing an incoming threat, Eternal Swordlord set up an absolute defense with the Eternal Sword domain by using his thoughts. Unfortunately, the imminent attack destroyed everything in its path, creating clanging sounds in the process before it nearly smashed the defense into smithereens. The overpowering force broke the palace hall underneath Eternal Swordlord into pieces and eventually turned into dust. Although his body was sent flying backward, he exuded the sword will from his body. After forming sword mudras on both sides of his hands, he hurled them against the fast-approaching sword will. In that instant, a destructive sword chi tempest was stirred up in their surrounding. Boom! After a deafening bang, Eternal Swordlord was hurled backward and crashed into many buildings and mountain peaks of the human divine palace before he was finally stuck in a corner. Nonetheless, that was not the end. Immediately, he saw countless sword will that crossed the space passage from the other side, aiming at his location as if they intended to demolish the entire human divine palace. Crash! Without warning, an ear-piercing bang was heard. The next moment, that space passage slowly disintegrated. Two silhouettes of the great emperors could be seen hovering in front of its exit point. The two of them attacked the space passage to shatter it. Even though the space passage was destroyed, eerie rumbles could be heard from time to time. All the avatars of the Great Path finally vanished from sight altogether. Although the commotion seemed to have subsided, the hearts of the cultivators of the human divine palace were still trembling in fear. All of them realized that Yi Futian had become even stronger than before. After completing his great path, even Eternal Swordlord could not hold a candle to him anymore. Fear was written all over the faces of the citizens residing in the central city of the human divine palace when they turned in the direction of the palace. All of them could feel the intense battle that had just taken place a while ago in the palace. It was mind-blowing to know that someone dared invade the human divine palace. Who would do something as arrogant as that? At that moment, they felt an immense pressure pervaded the atmosphere, causing them to feel suffocated and depressed. It must be a god's might. The hearts of the cultivators in the city palpitated like mad. Under the suppression of God's might, they felt like prostrating themselves with their faces and knees on the ground. After lifting their heads, they noticed a gigantic countenance that looked incorporeal in the sky. Everyone could see an exceptionally handsome face with long silver hair. It is Heavenly Emperor, Yi Futian. Their hearts were beating like a drum as they stared at Yi Futian's stunning profile in the firmament. Back then, the human ancestor had started the War of the Six Realms to execute Yi Futian but failed to do so. Moreover, many of their combatants had lost their lives during Yi Futian's counterattack. No one had expected that Yi Futian would become so powerful when the war had only gone on for a little over 1 year, let alone seeing him invading the human realm. The countenance in the ether was the embodiment of the heavenly path, a supreme being. He was the current heavenly emperor. A man whose predecessor could not even compare. Every person in the city could sense that intense authority of heaven that pressurized the atmosphere from the sky, including the cultivators of the human divine palace. Out of the blue, they caught themselves having a false impression that Yi Futian was the bona fide ruler of this world, the one who truly reigned over the heavenly law. Even the likes of the great Emperor Plane cultivators felt interior in the face of his authority of heaven. The extraordinarily gifted young prodigy from original realm had become an existence that even the great emperors had to hold in high regard. The eye of a humongous countenance fired a magnificent divine light from the sky and turned into the sun. Then, the scorching divine light of the sun that set the sky ablaze shone on the human divine palace. Swash! A powerful divine power of space transformed into a light screen and sealed the void. However, the divine light of the sun penetrated through it upon contact and continued to descend. At that time, everyone inside and outside the human divine palace was trapped in Yi Futian's divine domain of the Great Path. He seemed to have become the supreme ruler of this realm after seizing control. Watch out! A silhouette immediately fled from the spot before the divine light of the sun beamed from above, eventually reaching the human divine palace, turning an area of the palace complex into a burning area. The light formed a pit of fire around the parameter of the impact. Buzz! A gleam flashed across Yi Futian's eyes. An intense divine light of the sun instantly swept across a huge part of the human divine palace, cutting everything in its path like a massive sword. The scale of the effect could easily demolish the entire palace grounds. Yet, an intimidating destructive aura permeated the sky before the figure of the human ancestor could be seen unleashing his chaotic divine domain. After forming the Chaos True Thunder Sword, he hurled it at Yi Futian. The entire city was shaking violently as the heavenly thunder rumbled. Raising his head, Yi Futian set his eyes on a distant location. The moonlight shone on the Chaos True Thunder Sword, trying to freeze it. Nevertheless, the latter could not be stopped in its track, and it slipped past the constraint of the freezing power. A beam of sunlight radiated, combining its yang energy with its yin energy counterpart. As the divine light of sun and moon dazzled in the sky, it destroyed the Chaos True Thunder Sword and headed in the human ancestor's direction with the intention of killing him. He is way too powerful. Everyone was stunned by the sight of Yi Futian, whose divine power had a radical change since they last saw him. Was that the completed divine power of the Great Path? Previously, Yi Futian did not reach the Great Emperor Plane yet. But he had made it to the said tier at that time. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. How was it possible that he could fight the human ancestor equally right after he reached the Great Emperor Plane? In fact, he nearly wiped the floor with the human ancestor. What a scary and incredible great emperor he was. If one were to compare Yi Futian with the previous 6 great emperors, he could very well be the strongest one of them all. Back in those days, were the former heavenly emperor and sovereign princess as mighty too? Rumble. All the cultivators in the city, including the whole continent, were shivering in fright when another heavenly might suffused in the sky. They couldn't help but feel like falling to their knees. The supreme heavenly might that permeated the sky could be compared to the divine might of the Creator. Everyone who felt it bowed down in submission unconsciously. There was turbulence on the firmament above the human divine palace when the supreme heavenly might encompassed the palace grounds. Every great emperor in that place could feel a superior power looming in the area. While the ancient emperors could recognize the nature of the power, there was still a significant amount of cultivators who had just experienced it for the first time. Many combatants of the human realm were rooted to the spot and shook like a leaf. Was there a powerful being of this caliber in the human divine palace? Who was it? A magnificent divine light suddenly beamed on the human ancestor from the heavens. At that moment, the body of the human ancestor resonated with the entire realm. Meanwhile, an enormous version of his face appeared in the sky. The chaotic divine realm grew stronger steadily. It was like the power of chaos that had existed at the beginning of the universe. A roaring thunderclap comparable to the apocalyptic divine thunder emitted a blinding light that darkened the entire sky. Both the sunlight and the moonlight could not penetrate it. The chaotic true thunder sword accelerated further and collided with the divine light of sun and moon, emitting a sudden burst of dazzling flash. Shortly after the collision, the entire atmosphere turned dim, while the whole city shuddered from the impact. Even the great Emperor Plane cultivators quivered in panic at the sight of it. Futian faced the human ancestor directly in the darkened sky. Did the latter display the true power of his real body? Futian infiltrated this realm to smoke his nemesis out so that he could gauge the extent of the latter's strength. If the opposition could not stop him, he would not mind wiping the whole human divine palace off the face of the world. In fact, that was his main purpose of being here all along. However, he could sense that the real human ancestor was exceedingly powerful. Now that he had perfected his micro-heavenly path, he could even occupy a world by force and change its heavenly law into his version forcibly. In a nutshell, he could establish his heavenly path outside of his inner world. But he also believed the human ancestor could pull off a feat that would not be paled in comparison. After all, the latter had been cultivating for ages. At that time, he felt a threatening change in the atmosphere. He noticed that he was no longer holding the authority over the heavenly law of this realm. Human ancestor. Futian stared at the face before him and remarked, "It seems like your real body has been here all the time." An overwhelming divine power enclosed the entire boundless realm. At the same time, the insubstantial countenance glared at Futian and retorted, "After all these years, yet another of his descendant has shown up again. The world has been plunging into chaos for too long after the collapse of the heavenly path. It should be united again now. Naturally, I will lead this world into welcoming the age of the gods once more. If the heavenly emperor did not exist, I would have made it a reality by now. Your families have been standing in my way. So, tell me, who is the one making all lives suffer here?" From the former heavenly emperor to the sovereign princess, then to Futian, the three had been the human ancestor's adversaries. The first two had injured him fatally, so he had been recuperating slowly for years. If Futian did not exist, he would have waited for a few years and conquered the whole world in one go. Nonetheless, the reality was often disappointing. Things didn't go as he planned ever since Futian had shown up. After creating a world with the micro-heavenly path, the latter changed the law of time there and used the difference between the time flow of the two worlds for cultivation. Hence, that man gradually became a threat to him. Needless to say, all the efforts and struggles of his enemies would be futile. In the end, everything would be annihilated and arrive at the end of the line. Futian, if you could set aside our differences and submit to me, I could allow you to ruler over the heavenly law as my representative. You will be second to me. What do you say? He offered in an enticing tone, saying he would raise Futian above all the others and make the latter the first man after him in this world. All the great emperors in the human divine palace were taken aback after hearing his words. It never crossed their minds that the human ancestor would try to subdue Futian. Truthfully, the human ancestor was unsure whether he could dominate and kill Futian in a fight or not. Futian remained his composure after hearing the offer. The human ancestor had been calling himself the righteousness of humanity while he was ruling the human realm all those times. But was he truly the avatar of righteousness? Futian had seen the hypocrisy of the human ancestor. If the latter could bring peace to the world, why would he hide in the dark? Why did he resurrect the gods instead of raising potential cultivators to emerge as the great emperors? Why would he instigate the war of the six realms by commanding the cultivators of the human realm for a conquest which would cause all lives in the world to suffer? Whiz! A heaven-slaying spear forged with a formidable divine power appeared in the sky in response to the human ancestor's offer. He did that to test if the human ancestor was merely a paper tiger. It would not harm for him to try before his return. Kaboom! The spear pierced into the firmament, changing its appearance instantly and traversing the void. The chaotic true thunder sword crashed into the spear. It was pulverized into specks of dust and devoured by the latter. To think that even a sword of that caliber could not stop the spear. The firmament was smashed into smithereens and engulfed by the strike of the spear that was aiming at the humongous face. A violent storm stirred up right after the spear flew past the area. Suddenly, A colossal silhouette of a god with its head above clouds and its feet rooted to the ground appeared out of nowhere. The figure took the form of the human ancestor, who became the embodiment of the heavenly path. The spear hit hard on the divine body of the heavenly path, tearing it to tatters and intending to devour it. Yet, the spear was halted by a compelling defense. Surprisingly, the overpowering spear that could engulf an entire world could not break the divine body. It was as if the attack hit on an object with the strongest defense in the world. The body of the human ancestor seemed to nullify all forms of physical attacks on the earth. Bang! A deafening sound rumble blared. The body of the heavenly immortal might have a supreme defense power, but it could not prevent the spear from quivering its figure, causing cracks to appear and piercing through it. Simultaneously, divine power gathered around the body of the heavenly immortal. At that moment, Futian felt that his spear did not hit on mortal flesh but a complete world that could not be shaken. He could sense the energy in the entire human realm accumulated in the body of the human ancestor upon impact. At that, he could not help but draw in a cold breath. His father, Donghuang the Great, had activated the Revelation Divine Matrix during the War of the Six Great Emperors, and it covered the entire continent of the Divine Prefecture. Instantly, Futian knew that his father had become one with the Divine Prefecture at that time. Still, the human ancestor had somehow gone to the next level by becoming the personification of the world itself. In other words, he was indestructible. A supreme power flowed toward the human ancestor from every part of the boundless sky. At the same time, he opened both of the eyes of his towering face and glanced at the ground condescendingly, exuding an intimidating aura toward Futian. Whiz! He saw a formless and incorporeal divine sword that looked like the sword of the heavenly path when an invisible power rushed toward him. Without warning, it infiltrated his spirit domain destructively. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Futian immediately let out a groan as his spirit was being attacked. The sword of the heavenly path tried to wreak havoc inside the immaterial domain and obliterate his spiritual soul. Boom! A tremendous pressure caused Futian's body to fall back a little. Manifesting his face in the sky, he glared at the enormous countenance opposite him. As he had speculated, the human ancestor could come into the world already. It would not be long before the latter's comeback. This realm had become his opponent's territory. Futian, even though you can alter the flow of time, your cultivation level still isn't sufficient to put up a good fight. You would escape the death penalty if you chose submission. The human ancestor's voice resounded through the atmosphere. Every cultivator in the human realm could hear his words. The people who were dispersed across the vast continent felt a violent tremor, so much so that they somehow saw the happening in the human divine palace. Although none of them could comprehend why they were seeing this, it didn't change the fact that it was happening. At that point, they had an epiphany moment that their monarch, the human ancestor, was the bona fide supreme being in this world. Even though the heavenly emperor invaded their realm, he was still a junior. The human ancestor was the cultivator who had been around since ancient times. Futian shot the opposition a quick glance and turned his eyes on the gods of the human divine palace. He sighed. Greeting, gods of ancient times. All of you had stood against the heavenly path during those days. Yet, you are willing to stoop so low as to be someone else's lackeys now. I believed none of them had heard about the name of the human ancestor back then, right? The pupils of the gods shrunk upon hearing that. Chills ran down their spines as they stared at Futian. Indeed, none of them had heard of the human ancestor during the battle of heavenly laws. But times had changed, and things were nothing like what they used to be. The human ancestor had become the most powerful being in the world. He was also the one responsible for their resurrections and ruled over them. Truth be told, the gods actually had mixed feelings, as they were all individuals who had once distinguished themselves as the pinnacles in this world, all the more so for the super great emperors. When they had become elites, the human ancestor was probably still a small fry at that time. I wish you all the best, Futian uttered. Right then, his face gradually dissipated until it vanished from sight completely. Despite that, the human ancestor did not make a move at all. Obviously, he could not confine the former there. After lowering his head, The human ancestor looked at the people and affirmed, "Listen. Don't be fooled by his slanderous words. I have joined forces with all of you to establish a new heavenly law, and you will be the ones who create the new world that is to come." After the human ancestor finished speaking, he enveloped the whole world with his thoughts. Instantly, everyone in the human realm could feel a supreme God's might. No matter where they were looking from, all of them could see the countenance of the human ancestor in the firmament. Peering at all the living beings on the continent, the human ancestor declared, "There are countless cultivators in the human realm, and all of them called me as the human ancestor. But there are only a handful of you people who truly know me well. During the age of the ancient heavenly path, I, too, was once a mortal human, like most of you. The gods and immortals would rule over the law of the world while looking at us humans condescendingly. In the eyes of the gods who controlled the heavenly law, mortals are inferior beings. Even if we reached a high tier in cultivation, we would still be lowly to them. Even so, there were a lot of ambitious people who had set the goal to gain enlightenment on the great path and become a god. But since the age of the gods, I have always believed that humans could decide their own fate. Every cultivator in this world is the main character of the heavens. We could be comparable to the likes of the gods even with mortal bodies of flesh and blood. After the battle of the heavenly laws, the collapse of the heavenly path happened. Many gods had died in the process, but I somehow managed to survive through the ordeal. Since then, I've made it my ultimate goal to revive the glorious age of the distant past. However, it is no longer the age of the gods but yours. Each and every one of you can cultivate to become a god. This is also one of the things that I've put all my efforts to achieve all these years. The human realm thrived. Nevertheless, some of the conservatives grew resentful. Since the emergence of a new heavenly emperor, he has been reigning the heavenly realm and desires for the revival of the old heavenly law. An age where only the gods rule the world is not good. Although I've wished to see the restoration of the glorious days of the age of the gods, I've hoped to start anew with new heavenly law as well. Yet, the former heavenly emperor and his descendants were relentless with their hindrance to our grand plan. And it went on until the latest generation, which is Futian. He, too, is the same with his conduct. 1 year ago, I had led our legions into the heavenly realm, the land of the divine prefecture. All in the name to unite the order of the 7 realms with the sword of justice. From then, there will be no war in the world where everyone can gain enlightenment to become a great emperor. It will be a world where a mortal being can ascend to godhood and become the master of the world. Everyone will be the same, a world with perfect order, equality, and absolute justice. Nonetheless, our troops who invaded the heavenly realm and the divine prefecture lost their lives there. The top clan of the human realm, Orthodox Unity, was abolished, and its people were annihilated. As you saw earlier, Futian infiltrated the human divine palace and demolished it while attempting to finish off every cultivator there. Futian, Donghuang the Great, and the Buddha had created the Tiantian army to follow them everywhere. They are the representatives of the conservatives, who care only about their personal benefits and will destroy anything and anyone that goes against their interest. Therefore, I shall bring you with me to stand up and fight. With the sword of justice in my hand, I shall conquer the 7 realms. Now, who is with me to create a new world and establish a new heavenly law? The voice of the human ancestor was orotund. At that time, everyone in the entire human realm was greatly moved by his speech, and it created a resonance within the heavens. Suddenly, all the cultivators in that realm had a powerful urge to immediately charge toward the heavenly realm to kill the heavenly emperor, Futian. Divine light beamed from the sky of a city in the human realm while an intangible power rested on the crowd there. The voice of the human ancestor brimmed with a mysterious power that created a resonance with everyone in the realm. Instantly, a hint of hostility flashed across their eyes. They were overwhelmed with the itch to charge toward the heavenly realm and the divine prefecture to exterminate the heavenly emperor, Futian. A voice reverberated in their minds as they raised their heads to stare at the face of the human ancestor with anger. We shall storm the heavenly imperial palace to slaughter Futian and unite the 7 realms. We will join you in your conquest, human ancestor. We will join you in your conquest, human ancestor. Similar voices echoed throughout the vast continent. All of them were willing to fight alongside the human ancestor to establish a new heavenly law. According to the narration of the human ancestor, Futian was a villain who had committed crimes against humanity. Meanwhile, the former represented absolute justice. In no time at all, Futian returned to the 99 heavens of the heavenly realm. Futian arrived above the heavenly palace together with Donghuang the Great and Hua Jiyu. The great emperors like Yu Tu, Jiyu Dongliu, and the others came to the top of the heavenly palace to welcome the three of them back. How was everything? The string emperor asked. He finally felt a little relieved after seeing his young master's safe return. After all, the former heavenly emperor and the sovereign princess had lost their lives to the human ancestor. Thus, all of them had intense animosity toward their nemesis, the human ancestor. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The expressions on Futian and Donghuang the Great's faces turned solemn. Then the former turned to look at the latter and questioned, "Father, what do you think of this?" "There is a high likelihood that the human ancestor refined the human realm," Donghuang the Great replied. All the cultivators peered at Donghuang the Great in confusion. Shortly after, the latter said, "The human ancestor had created his law of the great path. While I'm only coating the law of my own around the divine prefecture, the human ancestor had gone beyond that level. He had refined the entire human realm and changed the law of the great path in that realm completely. In short, the whole realm will be under the dominion of his will. Does that mean the human ancestor can exert his manipulation directly onto the cultivators of the human realm?" Futian queried. He had felt a threatening aura there previously. When the human ancestor spoke to everyone in the human realm, a resonance was created. His words had turned into the power of emotions and affected all the cultivators there. Yeah. Donghuang the Great nodded. The human ancestor must have cultivated some unique divine power of the law. So, he had been refining and assimilating with that realm all these years. In the end, he became the world itself, and all the cultivators inside will be controlled by him. As you mentioned earlier, the said resonance could allow him to exert his influence directly onto all sentient beings, including the cultivators there. In other words, a whole continent of the cultivators in the human realm will fight for the human ancestor once the war starts. The string emperor frowned and continued, "Why did he insist on starting this war? I guess that has to do with his cultivation." Donghuang the Great's expression turned grim. "I'm afraid a war on a bigger scale will be unavoidable." There were 6 legions in the 99 heavens at that moment. Still, Futian hoped to prevent the war from breaking out but not starting one. It would be better if the great emperors could settle the conflict among themselves. However, things had already gotten out of hand. What he had wished for before would never happen. When I launched an attack at the human ancestor earlier, the impact of the strike did not feel like flesh and blood but a complete world. It looks like the human ancestor's defense in the human realm is made up of the entire realm's force. So, it will be hard to inflict any real damage to him. Futian recalled the details of the clash with the human ancestor earlier. To his surprise, he could not break through the latter's defense even with his strongest offense. Following that, he was repelled and left the human divine palace. Millimeter. Donghuang the Great nodded. Since the human ancestor refined the human realm, that whole domain will become his world where he is the strongest. But once he leaves there, he will be weakened to a certain extent. That must be why he had never left the human realm but had been dispatching his exterior incarnation outside. Futian bowed his head. His expedition to the human realm this time had helped him gauge the situation of the human divine palace. The exterior incarnation of the human ancestor had the strength of the 6 great emperors. Nevertheless, he was even more powerful in the human realm. He was already invincible when he did not fully recover yet. Just how mighty would he become after his complete recovery? The other ancient emperors were at the level of the 6 great emperors, which could be compared to the super great emperor. He had confidence that he could take down the super great emperor cultivators without breaking a sweat already. Rumble. Futian and the others felt a violent shaking while they were having a conversation. In fact, All the cultivators in the 99 heavens could feel that intense tremor. Then they lifted their heads to look at the sky. What just happened? Futian looked into a distant location of the 99 heavens. In no time, he noticed a hole torn open in the sky. It was perforated by a matchless divine power. What is going on? Everyone immediately looked at Futian. The human ancestor is opening a space passage to the heavenly realm, Futian stated as he stared into the distance with an expressionless look. After the space passage was built to its completion, a massive door of space could be seen appearing in the sky, which connected two different points in space-time. At the same time, a similar towering space passage showed up in the land of the divine prefecture from the human realm. The same space passage appeared even in the Western heaven world of Buddhism. The same thing happened even in the skies of the empty divine realm, the devil world, and the dark world. There was a great commotion all around the 7 realms. All the cultivators raised their heads and gazed at the space passages from different locations. In that instant, they knew a great change had already taken place. The fact that the human ancestor opened the space passages that connected the 7 realms would mean that he wanted to start the war of the 7 realms. No matter who they were, no one could escape from it. In the devil world, the cultivators of the Devil Imperial Palace gaped at a distant location while the Devil Abyss was roaring violently. They saw a spatial portal pierced through the Devil Abyss with an overwhelming divine power. Meanwhile, the silhouette of the Devil Emperor could be seen at the peak of the Devil Imperial Palace as he looked at that source of the ruckus. He did not let the people of the Devil world join the war because he was secretly helping his people to improve their cultivation level. Still, everything happened so quickly to the point that he could not even react to it. In just 1 year, there was a radical change in the world. A short while ago, Futian had invaded the human divine palace. The strength that he had displayed was clearly above the likes of the 6 great emperors. In his battle with the human ancestor, the latter had exhibited his almighty abilities as well. Nonetheless, the improvement of the Devil Emperor's cultivation after 1 year was unremarkable. Yu Sheng was the only person with an impressive breakthrough at his cultivation level. It should be accredited to Futian, who had given Yu Sheng a spatial magical item so that the latter could use it for his cultivation for the past years. When Futian first came to the Devil Imperial Palace back then, the Devil Emperor had only seen the former as a junior slowly making history. But he had never once expected to see his juniors not only make histories but also be playing leading roles. The changes in the world were too fast for him to catch up. Devil Emperor, the human ancestor called from the humongous door of space. "What business do you have?" said the Devil Emperor as he looked towards the door of space. "I wish to reset the order of the 7 realms and revive the age of the gods. Would the devil world be willing to join me?" asked the human ancestor as his voice reverberated in the space. The cultivators of the Devil Imperial Palace stared at the face that appeared beyond the door of space. Their gazes were filled with demonic will that was as cold as ice. The human ancestor did not hide his ambition at all. He wanted to reset the order of the 7 realms and revive the age of the gods. However, this age would be controlled by him. Now, there were already various gods under his command. "I am not interested," replied the Devil Emperor as he swept a glance at the face of the human ancestor. A cold snort could be heard. A menacing aura descended from the door of space as beams of terrifying destructive light shot out. They became chaotic divine thunder that directly filled the Devil Abyss. For a moment, it trembled violently. Countless light of catastrophe descended, causing the cultivators of the Devil world to reveal astonished expressions as they looked up at the rampaging Devil Abyss. For the cultivators of the Devil world, the Devil Abyss was both a holy land and a source of destruction. The history of the Devil world was a history of blood and tears as they struggled under the Devil Abyss. Menacing jet-black demonic light shot out from the Devil Emperor's pupils as he stared at the human ancestor's face. The latter continued, "I know that you can borrow the power of the Devil Abyss. However, do not forget that I can also cause it to rampage." The Devil Emperor fell silent when he heard him say this. Destructive light of catastrophe shot out from his pupils. The human ancestor had struck his weakness. If the devil abyss were to rampage, it would be catastrophic for the devil world. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. For many years, the devil emperor had dealt with the devil abyss and withstood its power. Hence, it had not rampaged. "This is your justice?" asked the devil emperor in a tone as cold as ice. So, the human ancestors' justice was to destroy the devil world. Do not forget the identity of the devil world. "The lands of the devil abyss were originally a prison," said the human ancestor indifferently. "Now is the time for the devil world to correct its name. Only by resetting the world order can the identity of the devil world be changed." The human ancestor was clearly mocking them. The devil world was but a prison in ancient times. As for the cultivators of the devil world, they were merely prisoners. The only way for them to shed their status as prisoners was to reset the world order. Hence, the human ancestor invited them to join the war. The cultivators of the devil world had always considered this to be their humiliation. Now, the human ancestor brought it up. The cultivators of the devil imperial palace revealed looks of rage. Demonic will roared and churned from their figures. They seemed ready to fight. However, the devil emperor was unusually calm. The human ancestor had found his weakness and wanted to make him compromise. He saw the insufferable arrogance of the human ancestor. This existence, which had survived since ancient times, had revealed his true colors. Nevertheless, the devil emperor remained silent. The human ancestor continued, "Devil emperor, the human realm, the empty divine realm, and the dark world are already amassing their armies to invade. Rally the armies of the devil world immediately and join the war. We shall enter the lands of the heaven realm as well as the divine prefecture and unify the 7 realms." The face gradually disappeared after he said this. However, his voice could still be heard, saying, "If you refuse to comply, the devil world will receive the blessing of the devil abyss." This voice reverberated across the sky. The expressions of the cultivators of the devil imperial palace were very ugly. The human ancestor was directly threatening them. "Your Highness." The cultivators of the devil imperial palace cried out as they looked up at the devil emperor, who was high in the sky. He remained standing there silently. His figure was tall and imposing. However, there was an air of melancholy about him. He was the domineering ruler of the devil world, the devil emperor. No one in his life had ever threatened him. Yet now, the human ancestor was threatening him with the lives of all in the devil world, forcing him to submit and follow the former into battle. The devil emperor looked at the spatial passageway that had yet to close. He then ordered, "Summon the cultivators of the devil world. Prepare for war." At that moment, the cultivators of the devil imperial palace all fell silent. They knew that His Highness, the devil emperor, had yielded. When the human ancestor came last time, the devil emperor was already prepared to fight a war. Even if they were to go to war, it would be because the devil world wanted to do so of their own accord and not that they were threatened. That was their stance. However, this time, the devil emperor had compromised. It was not for himself but for the devil world. After giving the order, the devil emperor's silhouette disappeared. He came to the devil abyss and looked at Yu Sheng. Now, the entire devil world was being held hostage. They could only break the status quo if Yu Sheng controlled the power of the devil abyss. From the looks of it, Yi Futian had truly foreseen that Yu Sheng would face a huge catastrophe when he sent over the treasure. A frightening and vast army of cultivators, consisting of members from the human realm, the devil world, the empty divine realm, and the dark world, was gathering. The forces, who had been forced back by the 6 major legions led by Yi Futian before this, were especially eager about the upcoming war. They were all dissatisfied. Now, they had a chance to make a comeback with the power of 4 realms. They were no longer scattered forces. They had gathered together and were preparing to attack the heaven realm as well as the divine prefecture. This time, their armies would invade the heaven realm, the divine prefecture, and then the western heaven in one fell swoop. The lands of the 7 realms would finally be unified. In the human realm, from countless cities across the continents, various cultivators were traversing across the sky towards the continent where the human divine palace was located. Above the continents of the human realm, The large groups of cultivators were having discussions as they traveled. Right then, above a certain continent, a cultivator asked, "Elder Brother Wang, are you also heading over to the human divine palace?" Another cultivator replied, "How could I possibly miss such a grand occasion? This is probably a once-in-a-lifetime event." That's right. Such an opportunity only comes once over hundreds of centuries. What an honor it is to be able to personally take part. "Everyone, be careful," someone down below called up and waved goodbye. "Friend, don't worry. When we return, the 7 realms will have been unified, and we will all be the pioneers of the new world order," a cultivator in the sky said loudly. "Farewell." As he said this, the sword beneath his feet shot across the sky, and he disappeared without a trace in an instant. Such scenes were occurring all over the human realm. They would all be fighting for justice on behalf of the human ancestor. They were going to war to unify the 7 realms and seize control of the world order. The door of space of the human realm was located outside the human divine palace. Countless cultivators had gathered in this region. They looked towards the palace with stern expressions. Many bowed respectfully as they offered up their worship. This was the cultivation court of the human ancestor. He was the god of the human realm and their faith. In the 99 heavens of the heaven realm, Futian's small world was also getting busy as the cultivators of the human realm were mobilizing across various continents. The human ancestor was adamant about initiating the war of the 7 realms. He also wanted to involve cultivators from all levels. No one could keep out of this war. Even though Futian wanted to avoid the war, he couldn't do so. Now, he could only prepare for war. As soon as he could, Futian rallied the forces of the heaven realm. Donghuang the Great did the same in the divine prefecture. They wanted to gather the Renhuang plain cultivators to join the war. Last time, they wanted to avoid dragging others into the war. However, it was unavoidable for others to stay out of the war this time. They could only face the battle head-on. To do so, they had to first build up their strength. Renhuang plain cultivators would be critical to this war. Futian and Donghuang the Great gathered these cultivators in the 99 heavens to train them rapidly. With the time difference, the cultivators could be trained to become top-level Renhuangs and even near deities. That way, these cultivators could serve their most crucial function in the upcoming war. After the summon had been sent out, Wuqian Buddha Lord, Tianyin Buddha Lord, their disciples, and Chen Yi and the others were in charge of receiving those who answered the call. They would bring these people into the 99 heavens and train them in cultivation. The heaven realm, the divine prefecture, and the Buddhist sects were all busy. Similar to the cultivators of the human realm being admitted to the human divine palace, the heaven realm and the divine prefecture cultivators also rushed to the heavenly imperial city and were allowed to enter the 99 heavens. When they came to the 99 heavens, they discovered that the place was like a completely new world that had been remade. It was actually a universe on its own. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. One of the planets in this universe was like a solar furnace. It was filled with scorching currents of heat. Many great emperors and cultivators were on the planet. Their leader was the alchemy great emperor, Daoist Monk Mu. This planet was an alchemy planet. It was filled with the aura of elixirs. Daoist monk Mu led the cultivators of the alchemy palace and concocted elixirs here. In another similar continent, Blind Tai was in charge of leading the members of the armoring palace in forging weapons. They manufactured large quantities of divine arms for the troops below the imperial realm. Aside from that, Blind Tai would personally forge divine arms for a group of core members. Even Futian would personally forge divine arms for the top figures below the imperial realm. As for the other cultivators, they were also busy training the legions. Donghuang the Great was personally in charge of this. Each level handled things in an orderly manner, and things were not chaotic. The closer they were to the war, the less chaotic they could be. Donghuang the Great had experienced war firsthand. He grew up and rose to the throne during a war. He naturally knew what to do. Donghuang Diyuan, Jiyu Dongliu, and the other commanders supported Donghuang the Great in training the legions. Every cultivator performed their duties and did what needed to be done. In this small world, massive changes were occurring every day. A day in the outside world was equivalent to 81 days here. They were all aware that they were at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers and the initiative this time. In order to stand against the human realm, they could only strengthen their core power. The 6 legions would serve as their main force, while the Renhuang plain cultivators gathered would support them. This arrangement was their only hope of achieving victory. One of the planets was overflowing with a piercing aura. The cold gleam of weapons filled the entire planet. The aura of the great path emanating from the planet was also sharp. In front of a majestic gate, a silhouette sat cross-legged. Divine arms circled his body. Before him, a group of 1,000 cultivators was cultivating under his instruction. Powerful, sharp auras surged from their figures. Some people even seemed to transform into divine arms. To walk the path of the weapon is to be indestructible. Everything will be destroyed. Every technique will be negated, said Wang Yanbing. His gaze was as piercing as divine arms. He looked at the cultivators before him and roared, "To walk the path of the weapon is to not have a body of flesh. There is only the weapon. Our bodies are our divine arms." After Wang Yanbing lost to Jiyu Dongliu in the lower worlds, he worked even harder in his cultivation. He had cultivated the path of the weapon in the celestial gate of vast heaven and had been improving at a rapid pace. Although he wasn't as powerful as Jiyu Dongliu, he still clearly knew what he wanted and ceaselessly pursued after his own path. Now, he was teaching the other cultivators how to cultivate like a grandmaster. There was a continent of monstrous beasts nearby. This continent was full of monstrous auras. Although various monsters were cultivating, it was very organized. All the monstrous beasts were working hard to improve themselves. There were many powerful divine beast bloodlines such as the Dragon Clan, the Divine Elephants, and the Pengbird Clan. The elders of the Dragon Clan, the Sky Demon Court, and the Divine Elephants were in charge of training the troops of the monstrous beasts. There were a few super-powerful monsters on the Demon God Mountain of this continent. Their leader was actually Little Condor. His gaze was sharp as he glanced in all directions. Beside him was a phoenix. They were in charge of the troops of the Demon Clan. Aside from these 2 continents, there was another planet in their vicinity. They were all under the Heavenly Mandate Legion, one of the 6 legions under the command of Jiyu Dongliu. Be it Wang Yanbing or Little Condor, they were all part of this legion. This segmentum was called the Heavenly Mandate Segmentum. On the main planet of the Heavenly Mandate Segmentum, Jiyu Dongliu was in the current Heavenly Mandate Academy. Right now, many people were with him. Do Jiao, Xiao Muyu, Long Chen, Jun, and the others were all here. They now served as Jiyu Dongliu's aides, supporting him in managing the Heavenly Mandate Legion. "How are the troops?" asked Jiyu Dongliu as he glanced at the others present. He was now a super cultivator. He should not need to inquire on the cultivation of those under him. However, these were desperate times. They needed to amass an army for war. Even great emperors took part in the training of the legions. Xiao Muyu reported, "These past few days have been extremely hectic. However, we have now established an order. Everything is beginning to fall into place and can run on its own. That way, even if more and more people come from the outside world, we can still rapidly absorb them into the training regime and make them part of our combat power. I am looking forward to the start of the battle," said Do Jiao somewhat excitedly. The Do tribe had always enjoyed battles. This was in their blood. "Demon God Planet is on track too," added Long Chen. Responded Jiyu Dongliu as he nodded his head. "Do not get careless. This time, the enemies we are facing are like none the Heavenly Mandate realm have encountered before. They are all of the top forces of the human realm, the empty divine realm, and the other realms. Any one of these forces could have easily crushed all the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate realm in the past. We are not what we once were. How can you compare us to our past selves now?" said Do Jiao confidently. He was also one of the core members and had always received the best cultivation resources. His abilities were very powerful now. "In terms of numbers, we are at an absolute disadvantage. The legions we are training need to be able to overwhelm the opponent and strike fear in their hearts, replied Jiyu Dongliu. Fear not, we will certainly make it happen, answered Do Jiao confidently. Time trickled past. The cultivators who were training in Yi Futian's micro-world utilized every second to improve their cultivation and to break through to the next plane. However, some of them chose not to break through to the Imperial realm even though they were qualified to do so. It was because they wished to contribute to the battlefield as those under the Imperial realm. By the time the forces of the human realm and their allies had completed their preparations for war in the outside world, a few decades had passed. On this day, Yi Futian and a few cultivators gathered at the heavenly palace. Wutian Buddha Lord said to Yi Futian, "The western heaven has been invaded by the armies of the dark world and the empty divine realm. I need to rush back there with my troops." The Buddhist sects had been able to seize more time for cultivation in the micro-world. As a result, the Arhat Legion had grown stronger. It was time for them to return and join the war now. Buddha Lord, please lead the Arhat Legion to join the war in the western heaven. On top of that, I will assign the Four Corners Legion to go with you. You may order them as you see fit, Yi Futian replied. It was still rather challenging for the members of the Western Heaven to fight against the invasion of two major worlds, the Dark World and the empty Divine Realm, alone. The commanders of the Four Corners Legion were the four disciples of Yi Futian. Among them were Fang Kun and Tai Tu. Fang Kun, Yi Futian called. Yes, Master. Fang Kun appeared even more charming now with his long hair. Nevertheless, his temperament was calm. He was no longer the inexperienced lad like he used to be. Even though not much time had passed in the outside world, he and his friends had been cultivating for more than 100 years in the micro-world. Therefore, he had had 100 years of training to hone himself. Yi Futian ordered, "The four of you, lead the Four Corners Legion and the troops under your command to aid the Buddhist sects in war. Obey the commands of the Buddhist sects." "Yes, Master," Fang Kun replied while nodding. Then, he bowed towards Wutian Buddha Lord and said, "I will surely obey the commands of Buddha Lord. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Amitabha." Wutian Buddha Lord put his palms together as a gesture of gratitude. "The four of you, leave with Buddha Lord," Yi Futian commanded. Immediately, the four of them went to summon their troops for departure. The cultivators from the world of Buddhism also left the micro-world one by one. 2 legions had been sent off to assist the Western Heaven in war. "Father, let the Revelation Legion led by Diyuan and the Ziwei Legion led by Emperor Chen aid the members of the Divine Prefecture in war," Yi Futian said while looking at Donghuang the Great. Not long ago, the troops of the Devil World had entered into the space passage that connected their world and the Divine Prefecture. They were now stationed at the North Cliff region. The Devil World and the Divine Prefecture were next to each other. Hence, the troops of the Devil World were in charge of occupying the Divine Prefecture. Yi Futian did not wish to fight against the troops of the Devil World. However, things had not gone as he wanted. The troops of the Devil World chose to participate in the War of the Seven Realms and were about to attack the Divine Prefecture. Donghuang the Great nodded in agreement as he said, "The troops of the Devil World are powerful. It will be a brutal fight. From the looks of it, our fight with them is inevitable." Donghuang the Great did not wish to engage in war with the Devil World either. He had a lot of respect for the Devil Emperor, and the two of them admired each other. Nevertheless, they were destined to be enemies due to their different stances. If Donghuang the Great had a choice, he would choose to be friends with the Devil Emperor. How he wished the two of them could chit-chat and play weiqi together peacefully, just like what they did last time when the Devil Emperor visited Donghuang Imperial Palace. The Devil Emperor was the overlord who withstood the tribulations of the Devil Abyss on his own. The entire Devil world rested on his shoulders. This time, the human ancestor used the welfare of the members of the Devil world to threaten the Devil Emperor. The latter was forced to declare war on the Divine Prefecture to preserve his people's lives. Yi Futian could still strive to get the Devil world to side with him if the human ancestor had not done so. The situation might have been different if they could postpone the war until Yu Sheng had seized control of the Devil world. This was also Yu Tu's intention. He had set up things so that one day, the forces of the devil world and the divine prefecture could both be utilized by Yi Futian. Diyuan, Donghuang the Great called. Lead the Revelation Legion and head back to the divine prefecture. Yes, Father, Donghuang Diyuan responded while nodding. Even though she was the descendant of Emperor Yi Qing, she had been raised by Donghuang the Great since birth. The latter had treated her like his own child. Even up until now, her surname was still Donghuang. Hence, she still called Donghuang the Great her father. In her eyes, both Donghuang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing were her fathers, with the former being her foster father while the latter being her biological father. Donghuang Diyuan left the palace. Yi Futian then assigned Emperor Chen, formerly known as Lord Chen, to lead the Ziwei Legion and join Donghuang Diyuan. After 4 legions had departed to the Western Heaven and the Divine Prefecture, there were only 2 legions left behind. They were the Heaven Court Legion and the Heavenly Mandate Legion. The former consisted of forces from the original Heaven Realm, while the latter was made up of cultivators following Yi Futian since the beginning. Yi Futian had ordered the 6 major legions to go to separate battlefields because their opponents were no longer fighting alone this time. They had dispersed their armies. All the space passageways were now open. This time, the allied forces of the human realm and the other 4 realms would most likely strike in tandem. This meant that the Heaven Realm, the Divine Prefecture, and the Western Heaven would be thrown into war simultaneously. Hence, Yi Futian had no choice but to distribute the 6 major legions across the 3 different worlds. The cultivators of the Heaven Realm could see the troops of the human realm gathering at the other end of the space passageway. The latter were all garbed in green clothes. They used this method to distinguish their own members. Once the war erupted, the world would be thrown into chaos. If they did not standardize their outfits, they would not be able to differentiate between their own members. In the Heavenly Imperial City, the Heaven Court Legion and the Heavenly Mandate Legion had lined up in formation. Their gazes were fixed on the space passage, and they were all ready for war. All the cultivators in the Heavenly Imperial City were looking up at the sky. Now, there were very few people left in the city. Most of them had evacuated. Just then, a cultivator took off his green robe and threw it up into the air. A mass of flames incinerated the green robe. When they saw this scene, others in different parts of the city took off their green robes and also threw them up in the air, burning them. In an instant, the sky above the city was ablaze with burning robes. If they wore green robes, they might have the opportunity to infiltrate the enemy camp and make it out alive. They could even betray the Heaven Realm and join the human realm. This was bound to happen, and many people would certainly do so. However, many people still burnt their robes in public. This was a wordless oath. They burnt their robes and were prepared to fight. "They are coming," someone said. Just then, intense tremors came from the space passage in the sky. A vast army appeared on the other side of the passageway. They were prepared to enter the door of space and invade the Heaven Realm. Below the space passage, 2 legions were waiting with serious expressions. The 6 legions, including their main forces and the troops they had trained, were 1 million strong. Each legion had more than 100,000 cultivators. This was a terrifying number, but it was minuscule on the current battlefield. Their numbers were still too few. 100,000 cultivators were too pitiful to guard a world. For the Heavenly Imperial City alone, such a number was insignificant. In the world today, some larger forces already had such numbers. Even so, they had no choice but to fight. Beneath the space passage, the troops were in formation. Each troop was separated. Right now, among the crowd, an intense piercing aura emanated from a troop. They were actually carrying bows and arrows. The leader was imposing and handsome. On his back was a divine bow that Yi Futian had personally forged for him. The atmosphere in the Heavenly Imperial City was exceptionally serious and depressing. The human ancestor set up the space passage above the Heavenly Imperial City. He would invade the place and directly declare war. Rumble. A dull and terrifying sound could be heard. The space passage expanded, and the entire sky became a door of space. Menacing divine power emanated from within it as it blocked out the sun. Dark clouds loomed over the city. "They are coming," someone said. Everyone in the heavenly imperial city looked up into the sky. At that moment, it was as though the end of the world had come. Everyone's hearts were beating intensely. Some cultivators had powerful battle intent circling their figures. This invasion was different from the last. This time, the human ancestor rallied all the cultivators of the human realm to invade the heaven realm. He wanted to unify the 7 realms. In the heavens above, beams of divine halos descended from the door of space like sky stairwells. Then, a vast army surged out from within and appeared in the sky above the crowd. The army of the human realm had descended. In an instant, the vast army immediately appeared above the heavenly imperial city, blocking out the sky. Tens of millions of troops had invaded the heaven realm. "They are here," someone said. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. The Heaven Court Legion and the Heavenly Mandate Legion had long been in formation. They had divided themselves into many smaller divisions and had been awaiting this moment. In the archer phalanx, endless dazzling light lit up right then. The light illuminated the sky. An unparalleled divine bow appeared behind Huang Joga. At full draw, the bow seemed to shoot out a divine ray of the sun up into the heavens. The divine power of the arrow scorched the space as it became a beam of sunlight that shot up into the sky. As one of the first few people who followed Futian wouldn't mistreat Huang Joga. Futian directly baptized the latter with his divine power of the law, complementing Huang Joga's natural talent. This allowed Huang Joga to comprehend the divine power of the sun. Now, Huang Joga was already at the near-deity plane and was a top-tier existence below the great emperors. Futian also personally forged a divine bow called Sun Chaser for him. It was an imperial arm compatible with the divine power of the sun. At that moment, an extremely threatening aura reached the sky. Around Huang Joga, other divine archers had also drawn their bows. Buzz. The divine power of the sun formed arrows that pierced and lit up the sky. They seemed to penetrate the darkness and brought the light of dawn. "Be careful," an astonished voice cried out in the sky. The divine arrows of the sun shot over in a flash. The cultivators of the vast army had just arrived. Before they could even react, countless cultivators perished before the divine arrows of the sun and were instantly turned to ashes. A sharp aura similarly erupted in the phalanx where Wang Yanbing was. The various cultivators that he led transformed into tens of thousands of divine arms and took to the skies simultaneously. There was nothing they could not destroy nor negate. They charged into the sky and also slaughtered many cultivators. The other cultivators also unleashed wave after wave of long-ranged attacks in tandem, killing many enemy forces. They caused the formation of the cultivators who had just arrived to fall into disarray. This caused the mighty army to fall into chaos. Huang Joga kept launching volleys of arrows. The divine arrows of the sun shot out again and again, killing tens of thousands of cultivators. However, the enemy forces seemed endless as they swarmed out of the door of space. As more and more of them poured out, cultivators covered the skies above the heavenly imperial city. Rumble. With a loud rumble, the divine arrows of the sun encountered a considerable resistance. Then, a shower of meteor swords rained down, along with a menacing meteorite shower as well as bolts of destructive thunder and lightning. The top figures who were swarming out were beginning their counterattack. The cultivators in the sky above came charging down, suppressing them. They were all wearing green robes and unleashed the first wave of destructive attacks. In the sky above the heavenly imperial city, terrifying destructive power clashed. It was like the actual scene of the end of the world where the heavens and earth were collapsing. "Attack," one side cried out. "Attack," the other side responded. The sounds of slaughter reverberated throughout the space. This war was a war to end all wars. The last war paled in comparison, be it in terms of scale or cruelty. Outside the micro-world, Futian stood there looking towards the battlefield. Beside him were the various emperors. All of them did not participate in the battle. The great emperors of the human realm had not arrived yet. The cultivators below the imperial realm started the fighting first. I wonder how many people will survive this war, said Zhuge Mingyu in a low voice next to Yi Futian. Her voice contained a melancholic tone. She had always been an optimistic person. However, this time, she still felt pessimistic. This was a war that would destroy the world. An army of more than 1 million troops descended upon the heavenly imperial city and charged towards them. This would be the greatest calamity in the history of the 7 realms up to date. Countless cultivators would become martyrs for the heaven realm. Those who made it out alive would be very lucky. Yi Futian had a heavy heart as he looked over the battlefield. The army of the human realm was already clashing with the legions of the heaven realm. Inside the destructive storm, many people were killed every second. It was tragic. Will Big Brother be alright? Zhuge Mingyu asked Yi Futian. Their big brother had also participated in this battle. Big Brother initially had the opportunity to become a great emperor, yet he did not push to achieve it. He had been preparing for this war instead. He will be fine, replied Yi Futian as he looked towards a corner of the battlefield. Over there, Sword Saint was wielding a destructive demonic blade. He slashed out again and again. Each slash shook the heavens and the earth, ripping apart the sky. He slaughtered his way through the green-robed army of the human realm alone. The demonic blade that slashed out was a saber technique of the devil world. You too personally taught him this. Bang! Right then, a terrifying sword of the divine human slashed out and clashed with Sword Saint's demonic blade. This caused the light of his saber to be extinguished. Sword Saint was knocked back a short distance. He looked up at the green-robed cultivator in the sky. The person had extraordinary temperament and appeared extremely young. The sword of the divine human, exclaimed Sword Saint as he looked at the other party. This person should be a direct descendant of the human ancestor. The cultivator was from the human divine palace. He was one of the human ancestor's disciples. His ability was very powerful. He also came over here when he saw Sword Saint massacring his way through their troops. Rumble. Terrifying demonic will churned and roared. Powerful demonic will surged from Sword Saint's figure and was extremely domineering. He stepped up into the sky. The demonic blade in his hand cleaved out. The jet-black light of the saber split the sky apart, cleaving a crack in the space. In another location, Do Jiao wielded a gigantic golden staff. He unleashed the strongest form of the will of the fighting god. It was as though he had become a war god. The staff in his hand danced and shattered the figures of the cultivators it struck, disintegrating their souls. Near Do Jiao, there was a woman wielding the divine sword of annihilation. Blood splattered like rain everywhere she passed. Everywhere the divine sword went, no one made it out alive. The woman wielding the sword actually had a face that could launch 1,000 ships. This woman was the daughter of Emperor Nan Luotian. She was of the same generation as Do Jiao and Xiao Muyu. Back in the heavenly mandate realm, she was also a very outstanding figure. Now, this group of people had grown to become the core power of the legions. The army of the devil world began invading the divine prefecture from the North Cliff region. On the continent, black clouds covered the sky above a city. The members of the devil world filled the skies. Tens of millions of troops of the devil world began their invasion of the divine prefecture. In an extremely short amount of time, the fires of war set the vast continent ablaze. Due to the entire army of the devil world beginning their invasion from the North Cliff region, the divine prefecture utilized guerrilla tactics and did not face them head-on to block them off. The army of the devil world had powerful explosive force. If the members of the divine prefecture were to take them head-on, the outcome would be tragic. Hence, the cultivators of the divine prefecture kept sending cultivators with powerful cultivation and those proficient in the power of space or speed to harass the enemy's operations. However, in the face of absolute power, all this was futile. Of course, even with millions of troops, the devil world still had to disperse its forces. The cultivators of the divine prefecture watched how their opponents prepared to move and then decided on how to counter them. At the same time, the Western heaven world of Buddhism had a different approach. After the Buddhist sects knew that the forces of the dark world and the empty divine realm were invading, They immediately gathered up their forces, including the Arhat Legion and the Four Corners Legion, and joined the battlefield. In the lands where the two major worlds invaded, the most devastating clash erupted. The Buddhist sects had many members. They were devoted to their faith. They would not allow the cultivators of the dark world to desecrate the world of Buddhism. They had paid a terrible price the last time the Dark Army invaded. This time, a resistance of a much larger scale erupted. The clashes were even fiercer. The world of Buddhism was ablaze with the fires of war. In the sky above the battlefield, there were the Buddha lords. They had their palms together as they recited Buddhist scripture. They were releasing the souls of the fallen from suffering, allowing them to be reincarnated. This time, the 7 realms were all dragged into this war. No one could stay out of it. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. On the battlefield in the Heaven Realm, Nan Luotian was fighting against a disciple of the human ancestor. Her divine sword of annihilation was suppressed by the other party. Even though this disciple of the human ancestor was not as powerful as Di Hao, he was a top figure. Nan Luotian received personal guidance from Yi Futian, and she merged his divine power of the law into her techniques to attain her current combat ability. However, she still felt great pressure when facing such a strong opponent. An empty space surrounded the two of them. The others stayed away from them for fear of being affected by the aftershock of their attacks. Right now, a menacing and gigantic sword descended from the sky. It contained the power of the human realm. Dazzling green divine halos burst forth from the sword of Nan Luotian as it collided head-on with the falling sword. A destructive storm swept out and covered the heavens and the earth. She was forced to take a step back. Buzz. A beam of lightning charged towards the disciple of the human ancestor. Emperor Nan, father of Nan Luotian, had joined the fight. His swordsmanship had further transformed, and it was purer now. His sword charged forward boldly as though it was the first sword created since mankind existed. Dong. A loud sound could be heard. A massive divine seal blocked the path of the sword. The divine seal covered the sun and the sky as it radiated golden divine halos. It contained the divine force of space, and it attempted to shatter the sword of Emperor Nan. However, the latter dazzled with brilliant green divine halos, and the divine seal was immediately shattered. The sword continued to bulldoze its way through with great momentum. Their opponent transformed into a divine human. He was imposing and was akin to a real god. He pointed a finger forward and touched the sword of Emperor Nan. The power from his finger caused the sword to him and shake vigorously. Swoosh. A shrill sound reverberated in space as cracks propagated on the finger of the divine human. Emperor Nan's body was pushed backward too. The father and daughter duo stood side by side as they looked at the cultivator before them. "Are you all right?" Emperor Nan asked. Nan Luotian nodded her head slightly. The two of them joined forces on the battlefield. In another location, Dojao charged forward fearlessly and slaughtered his way into the opposing armies. Everywhere he passed, no one was spared. He swung his golden staff as he moved, and many cultivators were killed by it. Suddenly, terrifying thunder befell him. It was the chaotic divine thunder. When Dojao's staff came in contact with the thunder, the former was corroded right away. The thunder was not shattered. Instead, it flowed along with the staff and entered Dojao's body, causing him to go numb. Even his spiritual soul shook violently due to the shock. Dojao stopped advancing. He raised his head to look at the figure pouncing towards him. The incoming opponent was a middle-aged man. His pupils were purple, and they glistened with the divine power of thunder. His eyes could directly affect the will of others. Swoosh. An ear-piercing sound rang. A thunder invaded the eyes of Dojao. The middle-aged man could affect the minds of others since his power of thunder could target spiritual souls. His mental attack was perfect to counter Dojao's domineering physical attack. The middle-aged man extended his arms, and streaks of lightning descended from the sky. He summoned Jotian divine thunder and turned the vast space into his thunder domain. A brilliant divine light shone on Dojao's glabella. His spiritual imprint radiated, and his will of the fighting god was activated to its maximum limit. His body grew larger, and his mind grew tougher so that he would not be perturbed by the thunder. Rumble. He swung his staff, and the entire sky shook. Rumbling sounds could be heard reverberating in space. As he moved the staff back and forth, an overbearing power was generated. It then blasted towards the other party. The space was shattered, and the heavens and the earth hummed. Right at the same time, thundering sounds reverberated. Futian divine thunder rained down and overwhelmed the space. The thunder crashed into Dojiao's staff and body. It further attacked his spiritual soul. This time, Dojiao was protected by the will of the fighting god. The will surrounded his spiritual soul as divine light flowed all around his body. Futian divine thunder hit his body, but he activated his power to its maximum capacity and overcame the limitation of his flesh. Dojiao continued to pounce towards his enemy despite the numbness he felt all over his body. When he struck out, his arm vibrated violently. Power surged from every inch of his body, and all of it was channeled into his attack. Even when both he and his staff were bathed in terrifying thunder, Dojiao still managed to land a critical hit on his opponent. Rumble. The staff whacked the middle-aged man, causing him to be smashed into gory pulp. He was annihilated. However, right after Dojiao killed the man, a group of cultivators moved towards him simultaneously. Even before they approached him, their Futian divine thunder flooded the sky. Divine might pressed down from the sky as endless divine thunder gathered around him. The thunder charged towards his figure like chains. Rumble. 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 Countless chains of lightning swept out into the space and circled Dojiao's figure. They ignored everything in their path and struck his body. Dojiao's power was activated to his limits. However, when the terrifying lightning burst forth, it kept eating away at his flesh. In the heavens above, powerful figures descended. They seemed to be from the same force. They all cultivated the divine power of thunder. It was as though they were various gods in charge of Futian divine thunder. They stood above everyone in the sky above. They were all cultivators from the human divine palace. Dojiao sensed their power. He realized that this war was different from what he had imagined. The human divine palace, under the rule of the human ancestor, had numerous cultivators from different temples, and their cultivation abilities differed as well. This group of cultivators specialized in the divine power of thunder. When their divine power exploded, chains of thunder and lightning encircled Dojiao's body like dancing snakes. Dojiao's body trembled slightly as his spiritual soul was under attack. Boom, boom, boom. Shocking sounds of thunder came out one after another, and a phantom figure manifested behind each cultivator in that group. These phantoms were transformed by thunder and lightning, and they were akin to gods of thunder. At this moment, men and gods stood shoulder to shoulder. What was more terrifying was that these phantoms resonated with one another so that a truly majestic god appeared in the void, standing between heaven and the earth. Countless chains surrounded his body, and dazzling thunder light burst from the torso of this god. Then, this light blasted on Dojiao, causing Dojiao's spirit soul to tremble. His spiritual soul seemed to come out of the body, facing a true god, as he was bound by chains. Loosen. As Dojiao let out a roar, the will of the fighting god was pushed to the limit, striving to surpass the limit. A towering phantom of the fighting god appeared behind him as the divine power roared fiercely, trying to block the corrosion of that divine power. If he didn't do so, he would be in a dire situation where he would lose his combat effectiveness and be killed in a most miserable fashion. Before the battle, Dojiao was pretty confident that he would be invincible no matter who he fought. However, at this moment, not long after the battle started, he encountered trouble already. He realized that the power he met in the human realm was like nothing he had faced before. This was an invasion of this side of the world, and the invading side also had many top figures. Boom! The golden long stick in Dojiao's hand exploded with astonishing divine power, with a blinding imperial glory blooming. The will of the fighting god resonated with it, madly urging its power. The divine stick slammed out and swept across an entire corner of the sky. But even as the long stick blasted out, those destructive chains of thunder were still locked onto him and his long stick, weakening its power. Beams of thunder slammed down, hitting that golden long stick, blocking its power, and pinning Doju where he was, completely restricting his ability to fight back. At this time, a dull sound came out, faintly accompanied by the sound of dragon chiming, resounding throughout the void. Long Chen was now on the move. He brought the power of the dragon god with him as he unleashed the golden dragon fist. The fist turned into purple golden dragons that emerged with angry howls. They attacked the cultivators bathed in the thunder, trying to give Dojao a chance to free himself. Those cultivators glanced at Long Chen, and immediately, countless lightning bolts slammed down on those purple golden dragons, entangling them, thus weakening the dragon's power considerably. Their divine power was directly affected, and this even cut the divine power of the others. Please keep reading on Wuxia World. EU. Buzz. The moment they attacked Long Chen, golden lightning flashed across so fast that they couldn't be sure what it was. Those chains of thunder that lashed out violently could not catch up with their target. Soon after, a golden divine light struck out, splitting the thunder into two. But that golden lightning was wings of feather from the divine wings of the golden-winged rock. It was Jun who attacked, killing one person with one blow. He had cut off the head of some cultivator. His speed was already faster than thunder and lightning, and he had beheaded his opponent under the opponent's thunderous attack. Jun's body was suspended in the void, and the wings behind him bloomed with imperial glory as if they were cast by divine arms. Every feather was like an extremely sharp divine weapon, and their emergence sobered up the other cultivators immediately. Bang! Another dull sound came out, and the figure of the divine elephant appeared above them. As soon as it stepped into the void, an incomparably terrifying divine power suddenly came down to suppress this corner of the sky. Kill! Dojao roared as he broke free. The long stick in his hand slammed upward against the momentum. At the same time, Long Chen blasted out the dragon god fist, which was domineering and powerful. As Jun's body sailed across the void and turned into lightning, the divine elephant stepped into the void to suppress that corner of the sky and launched its attack as well. All of them bloomed with their own incomparably terrifying divine powers, and each one of them was a near-deity existence. Yi Futian knew that no matter how powerful these 6 major legions were, they were too few in number, especially lacking in advanced combat power at the top. Therefore, in the days before the human realm was about to launch their official invasion, he had deliberately given special training to these 6 major legions. Core members, such as the cultivators who had followed him from the heavenly mandate realm, were directly baptized by the divine power of the micro-heavenly path. Even before that, Yi Futian had helped them reshape their talents, using the divine power to wash their bodies and spiritual souls. The paths they were cultivating now were not the path of the outside world but the path that belonged to Yi Futian alone. They were like the 8 legions under the throne of the heavenly path. Yi Futian represented the heavenly path of the small world, and they were its direct descendants. Therefore, the combat power of this group of people was awesome, and this was their only advantage. The direct baptism of the divine power of law endowed these top cultivators with massive combat effectiveness. To a certain extent, although the number of the army from the heaven realm was far less than their opponent, this batch of top figures was not any less excellent compared to the other side. On this battlefield, they quickly gained the upper hand, suppressing their opponents. Even though some more cultivators from the other side came as reinforcement, Jun and the others worked in tandem and soon immolated all the cultivators here. But even so, looking at the entire battlefield at a glance, they were still being outnumbered by the invading army of the human realm. There were simply too many people, and there was a huge gap between the numbers of cultivators involved. The human ancestor launched the power of the human realm to invade, and cultivators continued to emerge wave after wave. Then they pressed onward to Heavenly Imperial City, attacking different locations inside the city. Blood spilled wherever they passed and slaughtered. The sight was extremely horrific to behold. There was a sacred figure clad in a white dress on the battlefield. She was like a tree of life as countless branches and leaves spread out from her body. She possessed an extremely powerful life force. Whenever someone was injured, the divine power of life would pour into the wounded and restore their vitality. Thus, lives were revived, and flesh grew over the bones. As long as they were not injured by the same or an even more powerful divine power, they could be rescued and restored to health if they did not die. This was the magnificence of the divine power of life. This woman in white was Xia Qingyuan. She moved through the battlefield, constantly saving and resuscitating injured cultivators, but it was useless. With just her alone, it seemed that whatever she was doing was only a drop in the bucket. Moreover, in most cases, those cultivators were being killed outright, so there was no chance of rescuing them. Blood gradually stained her clothes. Xia Qingyuan, who was traveling through the battlefield, felt the fragility of life, and there was a deep sadness in her heart. She was also the princess of Emperor Xia's realm, and she had experienced her share of battles. However, this was the first time she experienced a war of such brutality. It was a battle between millions of cultivators who slaughtered one another in frenzied fights. The scene was simply too terrifying. Buzz! The golden spear pierced through the void and attacked Xia Qingyuan. Someone noticed Xia Qingyuan, who kept resuscitating the injured and restoring their combat effectiveness instantly. Of course, such a person must be killed. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.